Every Pokemon in the Pokédex has at least one interesting detail that defines something about how it was designed, how it behaves, or how it appears in the games. Some of these details come from lore, some come from gameplay mechanics. Moving through them from start to finish shows how the series has grown, how ideas have evolved, and how each generation added new concepts to the Pokédex. So we'll explore them in order, one Pokemon at a time, beginning exactly where the Pokédex begins. Before you drift off, maybe tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from tonight. Bulbasaur, the first in the National Pokédex, carries a seed on its back from birth, a design choice that reflects the ancient Japanese concept of symbiosis between plant and animal, a relationship where neither can exist without the other. The bulb draws energy from sunlight, growing larger as the creature matures, storing nutrients that will one day fuel a transformation into something greater. This process mirrors photosynthesis, but simplified into something a child could understand, science made accessible through fantasy. In early concept sketches from 1994, the seed was originally drawn as a simple bump, almost unnoticeable, barely distinguished from the creature's body. But the lead designer, Atsuko Nishida, insisted it needed presence, something that felt like it belonged there before the Pokemon ever hatched, a feature that announced itself immediately. She added ridges and color variation, making the bulb look like a real plant growing from flesh, a detail that took dozens of iterations to perfect. That revision, expanding a forgettable bump into an icon, transformed Bulbasaur from one design among many into the ambassador for the entire concept of grass types. The bond between Bulbasaur and its seed became the first lesson in evolution the series would teach, that growth is not sudden, but gradual, nurtured by time and light. Players learned patience through this pairing, watching the seed swell day by day, a visible marker of progress. Some Pokedex entries describe the seed as tasting bitter, a defense mechanism to prevent herbivores from eating it, showing that even in symbiosis, protection matters. The weight of the bulb, growing heavier with each level gained, affects how Bulbasaur walks, its gait shifting from playful to deliberate as it matures. This attention to physicality, how carrying something changes movement, demonstrates the designer's commitment to making fantasy feel grounded. Bulbasaur's popularity among players who preferred strategy over raw power created a community, trainers who appreciated that strength could be patient, measured, grown rather than seized. This philosophy, embedded in the first Pokemon of the Pokedex, set the tone for everything that followed. Before you drift off, maybe tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from tonight, Generation 1. Ivysaur, the middle form, represents a stage few games dare to explore, the awkward transition between beginning and mastery. Its bulb swells with stored sunlight, heavy enough to affect its posture, forcing it to walk on all fours with more weight than grace. The Pokedex notes that the fragrance from its bloom attracts other Pokemon, an evolutionary adaptation that serves no battle purpose but enriches the ecology of imagination. Developers added this detail to remind players that not every trait exists for combat. Some exist simply to make a world feel lived in. Venusaur, the final evolution, blooms fully under sunlight, its flower releasing a calming aroma that can soothe both people and Pokemon. In traditional Japanese flower symbolism, certain blooms represent the completion of a journey, the fulfillment of potential held quietly within. The designers chose a prehistoric aesthetic for Venusaur, blending dinosaur anatomy with botanical elegance, creating something that felt ancient and nurturing at once. Its mega evolution, introduced generations later, deepened that connection, the flower growing so large it resembles a small tree, roots spreading across its body as if reclaiming the earth itself. Charmander's tail flame has fascinated players since the beginning, a visual metaphor for life force made literal, health you can see without opening a menu. The fire burns brightly when the Pokemon is healthy and energetic, dims when weakened by battle or illness, and extinguishes only in death, a final light going out. This design came from a developer who wanted players to see health as something visible, something they could monitor through observation rather than abstraction, connecting them more directly to their companion's well being. In the anime, Charmander's flame became a storytelling device of incredible power, flickering in the rain to build tension, nearly dying under the storm's assault, then roaring back to life in moments of determination and rage. The tale's flame was inspired by the mythical salamander, a creature once believed in medieval Europe to be born from fire and immune to its heat, a legend that persisted for centuries despite no biological evidence. The designers found this myth compelling, the idea of a creature that carries fire not as a weapon, but as essence, something inseparable from its being. The choice to make Charmander vulnerable to water, having its flame threatened by rain, created dramatic stakes that the other starters lacked, a fragility that made caring for it feel more urgent. Players who chose Charmander as their starter often developed stronger attachments because of this perceived vulnerability, the sense that this creature needed protection, even though mechanically it was no different from Bulbasaur or Squirtle in terms of survival. The tail flame's brightness, adjusted in each generation's graphics, has become a way to track technological progress, from simple orange sprites to fully animated flames with dynamic lighting. Some Pokédex entries note that Charmander can judge its own health by looking at its tail, suggesting self awareness and intelligence, a creature that understands its own mortality. This consciousness, the knowledge that a flame extinguishing means death, adds existential weight to what could have been a simple gameplay mechanic. The moment when a wild Charmander is found abandoned in the rain, a story from the anime that became canonical in fan consciousness, even if not in games, created one of the franchise's most memorable emotional beats, a scene that taught children about cruelty and responsibility. Charmeleon sharpens its claws on rocky surfaces, a behavior that mirrors real predators maintaining their hunting tools. The Pokédex describes it as hot blooded and quick to anger, traits that reflect adolescence, the volatile stage between dependence and mastery. Its design emphasizes aggression through posture, leaning forward as if perpetually ready to strike, but the artists also softened its eyes slightly compared to Charmander, suggesting experience rather than innocence. This subtlety in expression shows how much thought went into conveying the emotion through static images. Charizard, perhaps the most iconic fire type, was designed to embody the Western dragon, a departure from the Eastern serpentine dragons that would appear in later generations. Its wings, powerful enough to carry it to altitudes of 4,600 feet, reference both medieval heraldry and the freedom of flight as ultimate strength. The developers have said that Charizard's popularity surprised them. They'd expected Blastoise to be the fan favorite, but something about the combination of dragon and flame resonated universally. Its mega evolutions later split into two forms, one leaning into raw power, the other into speed and precision, as if acknowledging that strength can take many shapes. Squirtle's shell isn't just armor, it's a hydrodynamic marvel. The round shape reduces drag in water, allowing it to swim at impressive speeds despite its small size. Marine biologists consulting on the design suggested adding the tail curl, which real aquatic creatures use for propulsion and balance. The shell's grooves were inspired by turtle anatomy, but simplified into geometric patterns that would read clearly at low resolution on the Game Boy screen. Every visual choice served both realism and technical limitation. Wartortle's ears, covered in fur, were added to suggest age and wisdom, a middle stage that looks more mature than its evolution. The designers wanted each stage to feel distinct, not just bigger, so they gave Wartortle features that Squirtle and Blastoise lack. Its tail, described in the Pokédex as lasting 1,000 years, has become a symbol of longevity in the Pokémon world. Fishermen in the games claim to use Wartortle fur as fishing line, a detail that adds texture to the world even if players never see it happen. Blastoise's cannons represent a leap in design philosophy, the first Pokemon to feature mechanical elements integrated into organic anatomy. These weren't weapons added by humans, they grew naturally, a biological impossibility that the designers embraced to push beyond realism into myth. The cannons can blast water with enough force to punch through steel, yet Blastoise remains calm and strategic, a gentle giant archetype. Its mega evolution adds a third cannon on its back, but more importantly, it shifts the creature's stance into something more grounded, more deliberate, as if the power requires deeper focus. Caterpie was designed to teach patience. It learns almost no moves, offers little in battle, but evolves quickly into something greater. The choice to make it green rather than realistic caterpillar colors came from a desire to make it feel friendly, approachable, a creature that wouldn't frighten players new to insects. Its segmented body and simple eyes became iconic through repetition, appearing in the anime's first episodes and cementing its place as the introduction to evolution's promise. Metapod, the cocoon stage, embodies vulnerability and transformation. It can only harden into shell, a move that seems useless until you realize it mirrors real metamorphosis, a period where the creature is utterly defenseless, trusting that the process will complete. In nature, this stage is hidden, but Pokemon makes it visible, asks players to protect something that cannot protect itself. That reversal of power dynamics teaches empathy through mechanics. Butterfree's wings scatter toxic scales when it flies, a detail pulled from real moths and butterflies that use chemical defense. But the Pokédex also notes that it collects honey, a behavior that serves no survival purpose in battle, only in building an ecosystem. The designers wanted Butterfree to feel like part of a world, not just a tool for fighting. Its wings were painted with patterns that suggest stained glass, beauty as its own justification. Weedle's horn injects poison, but it's described as timid, hiding in forests and preferring to flee rather than fight. This contradiction, dangerous but afraid, reflects real creatures that carry venom defensively. The choice to make bug types common in early roots wasn't just for game balance, it was to normalize insects as companions, something Japanese culture already embraced but Western audiences often feared. Weedle became an ambassador for the unloved. Kakuna, like Metapod, teaches stillness. Its hardened shell makes it nearly immobile, yet trainers carry it anyway, believing in what it will become. This stage exists to make evolution feel earned, to create a moment where care matters more than power. In speedruns, players skip these Pokemon entirely, but in slow playthroughs, they become memories of patience rewarded. Beedrill, fast and aggressive, was designed as the counterpart to Butterfree, showing that transformation can lead to different outcomes. Its twin stingers and additional poison barb create a trinity of threat, but its fragility keeps it balanced. The designers gave it compound eyes and translucent wings to maintain its insect identity while making it fierce. Later, its mega evolution would become one of the most dramatic transformations, turning stingers into lances and boosting its speed to terrifying levels. Pidgey, the most common bird Pokemon, represents normalcy, the everyday creature that populates fields and forests. Its design pulls from sparrows and pigeons, birds so ubiquitous they become invisible, yet the Pokedex gives it a keen sense of direction, able to find its way home from anywhere. This small detail transforms the mundane into the remarkable, suggesting that even common things hold hidden gifts. Pidgey's cry was one of the first recorded, a simple chirp that became the sound of beginnings. Pidgeotto grows a crest and sharper talons, marking its transition toward a predator. The Pokedex describes it as territorial, claiming a large area and defending it fiercely, behavior that mirrors real raptors. Its design adds length and elegance, feathers trailing like banners, giving it a sense of motion even in stillness. This middle evolution often gets overlooked, but it represents the effort required to reach mastery, the stage where training matters most. Pidgeot, with its spectacular crest, was designed to be the ultimate bird, Mach 2 flight speed, and feathers so vivid they seem painted. Its mega evolution enlarges that crest into something almost ceremonial, as if the bird has been crowned. The developers wanted Pidgeot to feel like an achievement, a reward for raising the most common creature into something legendary. Its presence in the sky becomes a promise that dedication transforms the ordinary. Rattata, small and purple, was inspired by urban rats, creatures often despised but incredibly successful. The designers wanted to challenge that perception, making Rattata cute rather than threatening, showing that survival is its own kind of strength. Its gnawing instinct, constantly filing down teeth that never stop growing, comes directly from rodent biology, a real behavior translated into fiction. In later generations, Alolan Rattata would become nocturnal, showing how the same species adapts to different environments. Raticate, larger and more aggressive, represents the rat fully realized, no longer cute but undeniably capable. Its fangs grow continuously, requiring constant use to prevent overgrowth, a detail that adds texture to its biology. The whiskers, thicker and more prominent, suggest sensory adaptation. The designers gave it a hunched posture, weight on its front paws, ready to lunge or flee. This attention to anatomy makes even simple designs feel considered. Spearow, angry and territorial, was designed as the anti-Pidgey, showing that not all birds are gentle. Its short wings suggest a creature built for aggression over endurance, rapid strikes rather than soaring flight. The beak, disproportionately large, becomes its primary weapon and identity. In the anime, a flock of Spearow chased Ash and Pikachu through a storm, cementing their role as antagonists, creatures that made the world feel dangerous even early on. Fearow's long neck and sharp beak create a silhouette that feels prehistoric, something between a heron and a pteranodon. The Pokedex notes that it can fly for an entire day without rest, endurance that contradicts its aggressive nature. This duality, patient hunter and furious fighter, makes it more interesting than pure aggression would allow. Its cry sounds like a warning, harsh and sustained, fitting its territorial disposition. Ikens, a snake spelled backward, represents the designer's playful side, but its biology comes from real serpents. The rattle pattern on its tail mimics rattlesnakes, warning predators without requiring venom immediately. The ability to dislocate its jaw to swallow large prey, mentioned in the Pokédex, reflects actual snake anatomy, but exaggerated into something more dramatic. Ikens becomes a lesson in how real nature inspires fantasy. Arbok's hood, marked with a frightening pattern, was designed to evoke cobra threat displays, but the designers added variety, giving each Arbok slightly different markings depending on region. This small detail anticipated later variations like unknown forms and spinda patterns, showing that individuality could exist even in early designs. The pattern's purpose to intimidate enemies works on players too, making Arbok feel more dangerous than its stats suggest. Pikachu, the face of Pokemon, started as one design among many, not destined for fame, just another electric type in a roster of 151. Its round shape and rosy cheeks came from a desire to make it cute, but not delicate, approachable, but capable, something that could fit in a pocket, but also survive a battle. The lightning bolt tail serves as both visual shorthand for electric type and a signature silhouette, recognizable even in shadow, a design principle that would influence every Pokemon after it. The name itself, a portmanteau of Pika, the Japanese onomatopoeia for electric sparks, and Chew, the sound a mouse makes, became so iconic that it transcended language barriers, children worldwide recognizing it instantly. Over time, Pikachu's design has been subtly refined through dozens of iterations, each adjustment so minor that players never consciously noticed, the face growing slightly longer, the body a bit taller, the proportions shifting to make it more expressive in animation. These changes, documented in internal design sheets, show how iterative refinement creates perfection, a design that gets better with each fractional adjustment. Its cry, originally a generic electronic sound in the Japanese red and green versions, was replaced with the voice actress Ikue Otani's actual performance saying Pikachu in later games, a decision that blurred the line between creature and character, making it feel more real than any other Pokemon. This vocalization, unique among all species, positioned Pikachu as special from a mechanical standpoint, code allocating specific audio resources just for it. The decision to make Pikachu Ash's starter in the anime, replacing one of the traditional starters, came from a desire to feature a Pokemon that looked distinctive on screen, something that would stand out in animation cells. That choice, controversial among game purists at first, transformed Pikachu from mascot candidate to global icon, its image appearing on everything from airplanes to parade floats. The refusal to evolve Ash's Pikachu into Raichu became a statement about staying true to oneself, a message that resonated with audiences who felt pressure to change, to grow up, to become something they weren't. This narrative choice elevated Pikachu beyond merchandise into symbol, representing authenticity in a world that demands conformity. Its prevalence in Viridian Forest, one of the earliest routes, ensured that nearly every player encountered one, creating a shared experience that united millions. The difficulty of catching it due to its low catch rate taught players about probability and persistence, early lessons in managing expectations. Over the decades, Pikachu has remained largely unchanged in the core games, while its merchandise form has fractured into thousands of variations, each one slightly different, wearing costumes or accessories, as if the design is so perfect it can only be added to, never replaced. The franchise's willingness to keep Pikachu centered, even as hundreds of new Pokemon joined the roster, speaks to an understanding that some icons transcend their original purpose, becoming something larger than the world that created them. Raichu, often overshadowed by its pre evolution, represents power at the cost of fame. Its design adds weight and aggression, sharp angles replacing Pikachu's softness, but many players never evolve their Pikachu, preferring the icon to the upgrade. This created an interesting dynamic where Raichu became rare, despite being a direct improvement, a victim of branding. The designers gave it a long tail to discharge excess electricity, a functional detail that explains why it doesn't explode from its own power. Alolan Raichu, introduced much later, would float on its tail like a surfboard, using psychic energy in a way that felt both logical and surprising. Sandshrew, covered in hard scales, was designed around defense, a creature that curls into a ball when threatened, mimicking armadillos and pangolins. The Pokédex describes it as living in deserts and burrowing to escape heat, behavior that grounds it in ecology. The designers wanted ground types to feel connected to Earth, not just strong against electric attacks, so they gave Sandshrew claws built for digging and a hide built for friction. Its color, a warm sandy brown, blends into its environment, camouflage as survival. Sandslash, sharper and more aggressive, extends Sandshrew's defensive philosophy into offense, claws becoming weapons. The spines along its back can be raised or lowered, a detail that suggests voluntary control, intelligence behind instinct. In battle, it rolls into a ball and strikes like a wheel of blades, an image both elegant and brutal. Alolan Sandslash would later add ice and steel, transforming it into a creature of frozen mountains, showing how environment shapes evolution even in fantasy. Nidoran Female, the first Pokemon with explicit gender in its name, introduced sexual dimorphism as a mechanic. Its smaller size and gentler features contrast with its male counterpart, but it's no less dangerous, poison barbs covering its body. The developers wanted to show that femininity and strength aren't opposites, that protection of offspring, a trait noted in the Pokédex, requires ferocity. Its blue color, unusual for female designs, defied conventional pink associations, a small act of subversion. Nidorina, growing larger and more aggressive, represents maturation, but interestingly, it cannot breed despite being a middle evolution, a quirk of game mechanics that has never been fully explained. Some theorize it represents a juvenile stage, not yet ready to reproduce, while others see it as a programming oversight that became canon. Either way, it adds mystery, a question the games don't answer. Nidoqueen, powerful and protective, was designed as a matriarch, armor-plated and imposing. Its body type, thick and grounded, contrasts with many female Pokemon designs that emphasize grace. The developers wanted to show different expressions of femininity, and Nidoqueen became strength incarnate, a creature that commands respect through presence. Its ability to learn a vast array of moves reflects versatility, the idea that mothers must adapt to any situation. Nidoran male, distinguished by its horn, takes the same poison concept in a different direction, slightly more aggressive, slightly faster. The split evolution lines for Nidoran were an early experiment in branching paths, showing that even within a species, different outcomes exist. Its purple color, darker than the female's blue, uses color theory to suggest different temperaments, warmer tones for aggression, cooler for calculation. Nidorino, with its larger horn and erect ears, becomes a fighter, posture radiating readiness. The Pokédex notes that it's easily angered and will charge at anything that disturbs it, classic territorial behavior. The designers gave it powerful legs for leaping, a detail visible in its stance, weight shifted forward like a runner in blocks. This physicality makes it feel more real, a body built for specific movement. Nidoking, the final evolution, stands upright like a kaiju, a nod to Japanese monster movies where size equals power. Its tail, thick and rigid, counterbalances its massive frame, and its horn, now fully developed, becomes its signature weapon. Unlike Nidoqueen's broad move pool, Nidoking leans into raw power, a focused approach to strength. The designers gave both final evolutions ground typing, connecting them to earth and stability, suggesting that maturity means being grounded. Clefairy, round and pink, was almost the franchise mascot before Pikachu claimed that role. Its design emphasizes innocence, large eyes, and small limbs, creating a childlike proportion. The crescent mark on its forehead connects it to the moon, an association deepened in later games where it evolves via Moonstone. In early Pokemon lore, Clefairy were said to dance under the full moon, a behavior that serves no battle purpose but enriches their mythology, making them creatures of ritual and mystery. Clefable, evolved through lunar energy, grows wings and becomes more graceful, its movements described as feather-light, capable of walking on water by barely touching the surface. The Pokédex suggests it avoids humans, living in quiet mountains, a shy creature despite its power. This contrast, gentle appearance and formidable ability, creates tension that makes Clefable memorable. Its typing, pure normal until later generations reclassified it as fairy, shows how understanding of Pokemon has evolved alongside the games themselves. Vulpix, with six curled tails, draws from the Japanese kitsune mythology, fox spirits that gain tails as they age and grow in power. The designers chose fire as its element to connect with the legendary nine-tailed fox that breathes flame. Its internal flame, mentioned in the Pokédex, never goes out, burning from birth until death, a heart made of fire. Each tail represents a seal on its power, waiting to be broken through growth and time. Ninetales, elegant and mysterious, completes the Kitsune transformation, nine tails flowing like liquid gold. The Pokédex describes it as living for 1,000 years, understanding human speech and cursing those who mistreat it, traits pulled directly from folklore. The designers wanted Ninetales to feel ancient, wise, something more than a battle creature. Its eyes, half closed and knowing, suggest intelligence that sees through deception. Alolan Ninetales, ice white and ethereal, would later emphasize this mysticism, becoming a creature of snow and silence. Jigglypuff, round and pink like Clefairy, but distinct, was designed around its signature move, Sing. Its large lungs allow it to hold notes indefinitely, lulling listeners to sleep, a power that's both useful and comical. In the anime, Jigglypuff's frustration at audiences falling asleep became a running joke, humanizing it through disappointment. The marker it carries, used to draw on sleeping faces, isn't in the games, but became inseparable from its identity, showing how different media shape perception. Wigglytuff, soft and inflated, has a body described as elastic and pleasant to hug, a rare design goal, creating a Pokemon meant to be comforting rather than powerful. Its fur sheds continuously, and when two Wigglytuff meet, they compare softness, a behavior that's absurdly specific and charming. These details, which serve no gameplay purpose, make the world feel inhabited by creatures with their own lives and concerns beyond battle. Zubat, hated by players for its ubiquity in caves, was designed to be annoying, a test of patience. Its lack of eyes navigating through echolocation comes from real bat biology, but exaggerated, the entire head becoming a mouth with ears. The developers knew caves needed common encounters, and Zubat filled that role perfectly, too well, perhaps becoming infamous for interrupting exploration. Yet this annoyance became nostalgic, a shared experience that united players in frustration and memory. Golbat, larger and fiercer, opens its mouth impossibly wide, four fangs draining blood from prey. The Pokédex notes that it drinks so much blood it becomes too heavy to fly, a grotesque detail that adds horror to a children's game. The designers weren't afraid to make some Pokemon unsettling, trusting that variety, even unpleasant variety, enriched the world. Golbat's evolution into Crobat, introduced in later generations, would require friendship, an ironic twist that redeemed the vampire bat through love. Oddish, a radish with legs, represents the grass poison combination, pulling from real plants that defend themselves through toxins. Its nocturnal nature, burying itself during the day, mirrors bulbs and roots hiding from heat. The name, a simple pun on odd and radish, shows the localization team's willingness to embrace wordplay over literal translation. This approach made Pokemon names memorable in English, each one a small puzzle of language. Gloom, dripping with pollen and nectar, evolves from oddish into something less cute, more unsettling. The smell it produces, described as unbearable, serves no battle purpose but adds realism. Plants that attract pollinators often repel predators through scent. The designers gave Gloom heavy lidded eyes and a mouth that seems perpetually sad, visual shorthand for its toxic, lethargic nature. This honesty about unpleasantness makes the Pokemon world feel more real. Not everything is designed to be loved. Vileplume, crowned with a massive flower, releases clouds of toxic pollen that can cause allergic reactions, a weaponization of beauty. The flower's size, disproportionate to its body, suggests parasitism, as if the plant has overtaken the creature. The designers have contrasted its lovely petals with its dangerous spores, teaching that beauty and danger often intertwine. Its counterpart evolution, Blossom, wouldn't appear until later generations, offering a path toward pure beauty without the poison. Paras, carrying mushrooms on its back, illustrates genuine parasitism, the fungi controlling the insect host, a relationship pulled from the real world. Cordyceps fungus. The Pokédex confirms that the mushrooms drain paras of nutrients, growing stronger as the host weakens, a disturbing truth presented matter of factly. This darkness, hidden in a cute design, shows the series' willingness to explore uncomfortable biology, trusting players to handle complexity. Parasect, the final stage, has been fully consumed. The mushroom now controls the body entirely, the insect reduced to a vehicle. Its eyes, blank and white, suggest consciousness lost, a zombie in all but name. The designers could have softened this, made it symbiotic, but they chose body horror instead, a bold decision for a franchise aimed at children. This respect for the audience's intelligence elevated Pokemon beyond simple monster collection. Venonat, covered in compound eyes, sees in all directions, a sensory overload translated into visual design. Its fur, soft purple, contradicts its bug poison typing, which usually favors hard shells. The designers wanted variety in how types were expressed, so Venonat became the fuzzy bug, cute despite its classification. Theories persist that Venonat and Butterfree's designs were accidentally swapped, their color palettes and eyes matching each other's pre-evolutions better, but no developer has confirmed this mistake. Venomoth, elegant despite its name, has wings that scatter toxic scales, a defense mechanism borrowed from real moths. Its eyes, large and multifaceted, glow in the dark, another real trait exaggerated into fantasy. The Pokédex describes it as nocturnal, drawn to light, behavior that adds tragedy, the moth's attraction to flames becoming a metaphor for compulsion. These layers, biology and symbolism intertwined, make even simple Pokemon feel considered. Diglett, a mole that's barely visible above ground, became iconic through mystery. What does the rest of its body look like? The games never show, and the developers have kept that secret for decades, trusting that imagination creates better answers than revelation. Its method of burrowing, churning soil, and aerating earth benefits farmers, establishing it as helpful rather than harmful. This ecological role, mentioned but never seen, builds a world where Pokemon and humans coexist mutually. Dugtrio, 3 Diglett connected, raises more questions than it answers. Are they individuals or a collective? The games treat them as one Pokemon, but their independence remains ambiguous. Some Pokédex entries suggest they're triplets, others that they're a single consciousness split into bodies. This ambiguity became part of Dugtrio's identity, a puzzle the series deliberately leaves unsolved. Alolan Dugtrio's fabulous hair, added generations later, deepened the absurdity, transforming mystery into comedy without losing the original strangeness. Meowth, a cat based on the Japanese Maneki Neko, or beckoning cat, represents fortune and charm. The coin on its forehead, called a koban, is a historical currency, connecting Meowth to wealth. Its ability, Pickup, reflects this, finding items as if luck itself favors it. In the anime, a talking Meowth became Team Rocket's mascot, one of the few Pokemon given human speech, a choice that made it both more relatable and more unsettling, blurring the line between creature and person. Persian, elegant, and proud, evolves from Meowth into something regal, its gem expanding, its body elongating. The designers gave it a sleek profile, every line suggesting speed and grace, a cat bred for beauty. The Pokédex notes that it's popular among the wealthy, a status symbol which adds class commentary to a game about collecting creatures. This awareness of social structures, subtle but present, shows the series' willingness to reflect real world dynamics. Psyduck, perpetually confused, suffers from chronic headaches caused by latent psychic power. This detail, that its strength is also its suffering, creates sympathy, a creature burdened by gifts it can't control. The designers made its expression vacant, eyes unfocused, a visual that communicates constant mental strain. In battle, when its headache intensifies, it releases devastating psychic energy, pain becoming power. This transformation, from helpless to overwhelming, mirrors real experiences of people whose struggles hide their capabilities. Golduck, sleek and confident, overcomes Psyduck's confusion, gaining control over its psychic abilities. The gem on its forehead, a common psychic signifier in the series, glows when it uses its power. The designers shifted its posture from hunched to upright, from stumbling to swimming, a physical manifestation of mastery. Its webbed hands and streamlined body suggest a creature perfectly adapted to water, evolution as optimization. Mankey, furious and impulsive, was designed to be pure rage, a fighting type with no calm state. The Pokédex describes it as angry from birth, even when alone, a creature whose default emotion is fury. This extremity borders on comedy, yet the designers played it straight, trusting that exaggeration reveals truth. Mankey's constant fighting, punching trees and boulders, conditions its body into hardness, training through obsession. Primeape, even angrier than Mankey, reaches a state of rage so intense it can die from fury, a detail that's darkly comedic and genuinely tragic. The designers gave it wild hair and bulging eyes, visual markers of uncontrolled emotion. Its pig like snout and brutish posture suggest devolution, as if anger has stripped away refinement. Yet it's stronger for it, a troubling message about the relationship between violence and power. Growlithe, loyal and friendly, was inspired by guardian dog statues found at Japanese shrines, protectors that bark but rarely bite. Its stripes, more like those of a tiger than a dog, add wild energy to its domesticated loyalty. The Pokédex describes it as brave and territorial, traits that make it popular with police, a rare acknowledgement of Pokemon's role in law enforcement. This detail builds a world where creatures serve society in ways beyond battle. Arcanine, majestic and fast, is called a legendary Pokemon in the Pokédex despite not being one mechanically, a discrepancy that's never been explained. Some players believe it was once intended as a legendary, later changed, but the description remained. Its Chinese-inspired design, flowing mane and muscular body, evokes guardian lions, creatures that protect temples and homes. The name Arcanine suggests mystery and arcane power, fitting its ambiguous status. Its speed, capable of running 200 miles in a day, makes it a creature of impossible endurance. Poliwag, a tadpole with a visible spiral organ inside its transparent body, represents early development, vulnerability made literal. The swirl, suggested to be its intestines, spins in one direction, counterclockwise, a detail so specific it suggests the designer studied actual tadpole anatomy. Its inability to walk on land, mentioned in early Pokédex entries, grounds it in realistic limitation, making its eventual evolution more significant. Poliwhirl, gaining arms and legs, enters an amphibious stage, capable of living on land or in water. The swirl on its belly, now external, becomes a hypnotic tool, a signature that's both functional and decorative. Its evolution is unique, offering two possible outcomes depending on items used, an early experiment in branching paths. This choice between Polyrath's strength and Politoad's leadership would become thematic in the series, showing that growth can take different forms. Polyrath, muscular and disciplined, learns martial arts, training in brutal swimming regimens. The Pokédex describes its body fat as near zero, all muscle, a physique built through effort. The designers gave it a serious expression, eyes that suggest focus rather than anger. Its dual typing, water and fighting, creates strategic depth, weaknesses that force careful play. This mechanical consideration, woven into lore, shows how game balance and storytelling can support each other. Abra, asleep 18 hours a day, teleports away from danger while dreaming, a defense mechanism that frustrated players trying to catch it. This design, making a Pokemon uncatchable through normal means, taught patience and strategy, requiring specific items or tactics. Its inspiration comes from spoon bending psychics and meditation, concepts that the designers found fascinating. The closed eyes and hunched posture suggest deep concentration, a mind traveling elsewhere while the body rests. Kadabra, evolving through intelligence rather than strength, bends spoons and emits psychic waves that cause headaches. Its design, humanoid and thin, suggests asceticism, the body reduced to support the mind. Controversy surrounded Kadabra for years due to its resemblance to Uri Geller, a magician who sued over the likeness, causing the Pokemon to disappear from cards and merchandise for decades. This legal battle became part of its mythology, a Pokemon cursed by reality. Alakazam, with an IQ of 5,000, represents intelligence as ultimate power, a brain that never stops growing. It holds spoons to amplify psychic energy, a quirk that's both mystical and absurd, powerful and silly. The designers gave it a long mustache, suggesting age and wisdom, and a frail body, showing that mental strength comes at physical cost. Its mega evolution adds more spoons and a longer beard, doubling down on the wizard aesthetic. This commitment to its concept, even the ridiculous parts, gives Alakazam coherent identity. Machop, muscular despite its size, trains constantly, lifting Graveler as weights. This dedication, the Pokemon equivalent of a gym routine, humanizes it, suggesting discipline over raw talent. Its gray skin and reptilian features prevent it from looking too human, maintaining distance between creature and person. The designers wanted fighting types to feel powerful, but not threatening, strong without aggression, so Machop lifts rocks instead of punching trees like Mankey. Machoke, even more muscular, wears a belt to contain its strength, a limiter that prevents it from destroying itself. This detail, that power requires restraint, adds depth, showing that strength without control is dangerous. The belt, described as a gift from trainers, represents trust, the Pokemon accepting limitation out of care for others. This relationship between Pokemon and trainer, built into lore, reinforces the series' core theme. Machamp, with 4 arms, can throw 500 punches per second, a number so absurd it becomes mythic. The designers knew realism wasn't the goal, so they embraced exaggeration, making Machamp a creature of impossible feats. Its fourth pair of arms, growing through evolution, raises biological questions the games don't answer, trusting that spectacle matters more than explanation. In battle, it can hold opponents while striking, a unique advantage that its design supports. Bellsprout, a plant with minimal roots, walks on vines, a reversal of expected anatomy. Its thin body and large head suggest imbalance, yet it thrives, showing that weakness can be adaptation. The Pokédex notes that it's flexible enough to avoid attacks, bending rather than breaking. This philosophy, resilience through flexibility, gives Bellsprout unexpected depth. Its name, a bell shaped sprout, captures its entire design in 2 syllables. Weepinbell, larger and more predatory, lures prey with sweet scent before dissolving them in acid. This shift, from cute to carnivorous, surprises players who underestimated Bellsprout. The designers gave it a permanent smile, cheerful despite its brutal feeding method, a juxtaposition that's darkly humorous. Its eyes, barely visible, suggest a creature driven by instinct over intelligence, a plant pretending to be more. Victreebel, the final form, becomes a full pitcher plant, hanging from branches and waiting for prey to fall into its mouth. The real world inspiration, Nepenthes plants, digest insects, but Victreebel is large enough to theoretically consume small Pokemon, a grotesque escalation. The Pokédex describes its internal fluids as highly acidic, capable of dissolving anything, a claim that borders on horror. Despite this darkness, the designers kept it somewhat goofy, large eyes, and vine arms, preventing it from feeling too monstrous. Tentacool, common in water routes, became as infamous as Zubat for its constant encounters. Its design, a jellyfish with gemstone eyes, is simple but effective, each tentacle tipped with a stinger. The Pokédex notes that its body is mostly water, making it nearly invisible in the ocean, a natural camouflage. This detail, which could have been purely mechanical, instead deepens its ecology, explaining why trainers stumble into it so often. Tentacruel, massive and intimidating, can extend its tentacles to ensnare prey, growing up to 80 tentacles when fully matured. This expansion, from 10 to 80, suggests exponential growth, a creature that becomes more dangerous with age. The designers gave it a menacing expression, eyes sharp and aware, contrasting Tentacool's vacant stare. Its size, large enough to capsize boats, makes it one of the few Pokemon that pose genuine danger to humans in lore. Geodude, a rock with arms, was designed to be punched and to punch back, the simplest expression of rock-type philosophy. Its body, literally stone, makes it immune to traditional damage, a design that's both logical and absurd. The Pokédex describes it as common in mountains, half buried and easily mistaken for normal rocks, a detail that explains why hikers always seem to have them. Its personality, eager to fight despite being a rock, gives it charm, a stone with a warrior's heart. Graveler, larger and rounder, rolls down mountains, crushing everything in its path. This behavior, destructive but natural, shows the series' willingness to portray Pokemon as dangerous even when not malicious. The designers added more edges and protrusions, making it look more painful to touch. Its 4 arms, a strange anatomical choice, suggests that evolution isn't always logical. Sometimes it's just stranger. Golem, fully evolved, develops a shell harder than diamond, but sheds it annually to grow. This detail, that even the toughest creatures remain vulnerable during growth, adds pathos. The Pokédex describes it as exploding to attack, launching itself like a cannonball, a tactic that's both effective and terrifying. Its face, barely visible between rocky plates, looks ancient, as if it's been rolling down mountains for centuries. Ponyta, a horse wreathed in flames, was inspired by mythical fire horses from various cultures. Its mane and tail, pure fire, don't burn those it trusts, a mechanic that's explained as psychic recognition, the flame's knowing friend from foe. This impossible biology becomes magical, a creature whose fire is less element and more emotion. The designers gave it a gentle expression, eyes soft despite the flames, showing that fire doesn't always mean aggression. Rapidash, evolved through speed, develops a horn and longer flames, becoming the unicorn to Ponyta's foal. Its top speed, 150 miles per hour, makes it one of the fastest land Pokémon, a creature built for racing. The horn, a spiral of heat, adds a weapon to its speed, completing the fantasy. In later games, Galarian Rapidash would become Psychic type, emphasizing magic over fire, showing how regions reimagine familiar creatures. Slowpoke, famous for being slow, doesn't realize when it's hurt until 5 seconds later, a delay that's both comedic and sad. The Pokédex suggests its tail, sweet and nutritious, regenerates when bitten off, an adaptation that turns predation into annoyance rather than tragedy. Its vacant expression and perpetual confusion endear it to players, a creature that exists at its own pace, unbothered by urgency. This serenity, accidental or intentional, makes Slowpoke zen in a world obsessed with speed. Slowbro, created when a Shelder bites Slowpoke's tail, represents one of the series' strangest symbiotic relationships. The Shelder, now permanently attached, feeds on Slowpoke's secretions while making it stand upright, a partnership neither chose but both accept. This forced evolution, accidental and irreversible, adds darkness to the design, a creature changed by circumstance rather than will. Yet Slowbro seems unbothered, still vacant, still slow, suggesting that acceptance is its own kind of wisdom. Magnemite, a living magnet, defies biology entirely, a Pokemon made of metal and electricity. The designers wanted to explore artificial life, creatures that might not be natural, but are no less alive. Its single eye and magnets give it minimal features, yet personality emerges through movement, the way it hovers and tilts. The Pokédex explains that it feeds on electricity, often causing power outages, a behavior that positions it as both fascinating and inconvenient. Magneton, 3 Magnemite linked by magnetism, raises questions about consciousness. Are they individuals or one mind? The games never clarify, treating them as a single entity, despite being visibly 3. This ambiguity, like Dugtrio, became part of the design's charm, a mystery that invites speculation. Its increased power comes purely from combination, showing that unity creates strength. Far-fetched, a duck holding a leek, was inspired by a Japanese saying about something being perfect. A duck comes bearing green onions, implying it's ready to be cooked. This dark humor, a Pokemon carrying its own garnish, went over many Western players' heads, yet it added cultural depth. The Pokédex describes the leek as essential, both weapon and tool, and Farfetch'd will defend it fiercely. This attachment, a creature bonded to a plant, mirrors human relationships with objects, giving Farfetch'd surprising pathos. Doduo, a 2-headed ostrich, runs faster than most Pokemon, reaching 60 miles per hour. The heads, sharing one body, supposedly coordinate through telepathy, a solution to the problem of dual consciousness. The designers gave each head a distinct expression, suggesting individual personalities forced to cooperate. Its inability to fly, despite being part flying type, confused players, but the designers explained that it can jump high enough to classify as airborne, a technicality that became canon. Dodrio, gaining a third head, becomes even faster and more aggressive. The Pokédex claims each head represents a different emotion: joy, anger, and sorrow, a division of consciousness that's both poetic and unsettling. This separation, feeling all emotions simultaneously through different minds, gives Dodrio complexity beyond its simple design. Its speed reaches 90 miles per hour, a land creature competing with flyers, showing that evolution optimizes in unexpected ways. Seal, a white seal pup, represents pure water type simplicity, no secondary features, just aquatic mammal made Pokémon. Its horn, small and singular, was added to distinguish it from real seals, a minimal change that maintains recognition while creating distance. The Pokédex notes that it loves cold water, swimming in icy seas where it stores energy. This detail, preferring harsh environments, gives Seal toughness beneath its cute exterior. Dugong, evolving in cold climates, becomes sleek and graceful, its horn more prominent. The designers gave it a serene expression, eyes half closed, suggesting contentment in frozen waters. Its body, streamlined for swimming, can cut through ice, making it both beautiful and powerful. The Pokédex describes its rest on icebergs, a solitary creature finding peace in isolation, a theme that resonates deeper than its simple design suggests. Grimer, living pollution, was created to reflect environmental concerns, a Pokémon born from human waste. Its body, toxic sludge, smells terrible and leaves poison wherever it touches. The designers didn't soften this. Grimer is unpleasant, a reminder that humanity creates monsters through carelessness. Yet it's still a Pokemon, still capable of bonding with trainers, suggesting that even mistakes deserve compassion. This moral complexity elevates Grimer beyond shock value. Muck, larger and more toxic, represents pollution consolidated, a creature so poisonous that nothing grows where it passes. The Pokédex claims its body contains lethal toxins, yet trainers keep it as a companion, showing the series' faith and care overcoming nature. Alolan Muk, introduced later, would be reframed as a solution to pollution, eating garbage and converting it into vibrant colors, redemption through reinvention. Shelter, a bivalve with a face clamped shut with tremendous force, strong enough to break bone. The designers gave it a long tongue and spiral shell, features that make it recognizable beyond generic clam. Its evolution, triggered by Waterstone, drastically changes its appearance, a transformation more dramatic than most. The Pokédex suggests its shell is harder than diamond, a claim that positions it as valuable and dangerous, treasure and threat. Cloyster, covered in spikes, can launch them like missiles, a defense mechanism that's also devastating offense. The designers made its shell so armored that no physical attack can break it, forcing strategic thinking. Its face, barely visible inside the shell, looks serene despite the violence it's capable of, a disconnect that's both funny and fitting. This contrast, peaceful interior and deadly exterior, defines Cloyster's identity. Ghastly, a sphere of gas with a face, was designed to be unsettling, a ghost that can slip through walls and suffocate victims. The Pokédex doesn't shy from darkness, describing how it envelops prey in poisonous gas, a kill method that's genuinely horrifying. Yet it's also fragile. Wind can disperse it, showing that even terrifying creatures have weaknesses. This balance, scary but vulnerable, makes ghost types fascinating. Haunter, given hands, becomes more physical, capable of interaction beyond mere haunting. The designers added a mischievous grin, suggesting it enjoys scaring people. Ghost is trickster. Its floating, detached hands add to its wrongness, a creature that defies anatomy. The Pokédex describes its lick as draining life force, a touch that causes shivering until death, escalating from prank to threat. Gengar, fully evolved, hides in shadows and mimics people's silhouettes, a predator that uses stealth and deception. The designers gave it a wide, permanent smile, turning friendliness into menace. Its mega evolution, introduced later, would add a third eye and spikes, leaning into demonic imagery. Despite this darkness, Gengar became beloved, its playful malice more entertaining than frightening, a villain you root for. Onyx, a chain of boulders held together by magnetism, was designed to be massive, towering over trainers at 28 feet. Its size, intimidating in concept, became comedic in execution when games showed its weight at only 400 pounds, lighter than many smaller Pokémon. This discrepancy, likely a programming error, became a joke among fans, a giant made of foam. Despite this, Onyx remained iconic, Brock's signature Pokémon, representing the first major challenge for new trainers. Drowsy, inspired by the mythical Baku that eats dreams, uses hypnosis to feed on sleeping thoughts. This violation, entering minds without permission, positions it as creepy despite its goofy appearance. The Pokédex describes children who've been targeted by Drowsy, a detail that adds genuine unsettlement to a game about collecting creatures. The designers trusted that this darkness wouldn't alienate players, that complexity improves fantasy. Hypno, holding a pendulum, perfects its hypnotic abilities, becoming so skilled it can control minds permanently. The Pokédex tells of a hypno abducting a child, a story that crosses into horror, suggesting that not all Pokémon are safe companions. This willingness to portray certain species as dangerous, even evil, gives the world stakes, makes the bond between trainer and Pokemon meaningful because it requires trust. Krabby, a simple crab, was designed to fill coastal areas, a common creature with personality. Its claws regrow when lost, a real biological trait translated into game mechanics. The Pokédex notes that when many Krabby gather, they compete by clashing claws, a ritualized battle that determines hierarchy. This behavior, which serves no purpose for trainers, enriches the ecology, showing that Pokémon have lives beyond their utility. Kingler, evolved into a Titan-clawed champion, has one claw so massive it struggles to maintain balance. This hypertrophy, a strength that becomes burden, adds realism, showing that evolution isn't always optimization. The designers made the claw comically large, embracing absurdity while maintaining functionality. In battle, Kingler swings this claw with devastating force, but walking on land becomes awkward, trade offs that make it feel like a real organism adapting to its form. Voltorb, indistinguishable from Pokeballs, represents mimicry as survival strategy. The Pokédex suggests it appeared around the same time Pokeballs were invented, implying it evolved in response to human technology, a rapid adaptation that's biologically impossible but thematically fascinating. Its tendency to explode when startled made it dangerous in places like the power plant, teaching players that not everything worth catching is safe to approach. Electrode, faster and more explosive, has been described as having almost no mass, a contradiction that the series doesn't explain. Its smile, wide and manic, suggests a creature that enjoys chaos, a ball of energy with a personality. The designers knew Electrode was essentially Voltorb inverted, so they made it faster, more aggressive, leaning into the idea that evolution isn't just growth, sometimes it's transformation of purpose. Execute, six eggs that form a collective, represents one of the strangest designs in Generation 1. The Pokédex clarifies they're not actually eggs, but seeds, a distinction that raises more questions. One is always cracked, a detail that suggests injury or imperfection, yet the group stays together, protecting the damaged one. This loyalty, seeds that won't abandon the broken, gives Execute a surprising emotional weight. Executor, tall and coconut headed, evolves into a walking palm tree, a transformation so dramatic it borders on absurd. The three heads, each with its own mind, supposedly argue constantly, yet they coordinate in battle, showing that disagreement doesn't prevent cooperation. Alalan Executor, introduced later, would take this to extremes, growing absurdly tall, a joke about tropical climates taken seriously. This commitment to the ridiculous makes Executor memorable. Cubone, wearing its mother's skull, is one of the series' darkest concepts, a Pokémon defined by grief. The Pokédex states that every Cubone wears the skull of its deceased mother, an origin story that's both touching and horrifying, suggesting that every Cubone is an orphan. The bone it carries, used as a weapon, adds to the tragedy, a child fighting with relics of loss. This design, trauma made literal, resonated deeply, making Cubone one of the most emotionally complex Pokemon. Marowak, evolved through pain, grows stronger and more skilled with its bone, channeling grief into mastery. The designers gave it a harder expression, eyes that suggest acceptance rather than sorrow, showing that it's moved from mourning to memory. The skull it wears, now fused permanently, becomes part of its identity, no longer removable, suggesting that some losses never leave us. They become who we are. Alalan Marowak, a fire ghost type, would later add spiritual layers, connecting it to ancestor worship and the afterlife. Hitmonlee, legs designed for kicking, represents pure martial discipline, a body optimized for one purpose. The Pokédex describes its legs as extendable, capable of stretching to incredible lengths, a superpower that's equal parts impressive and unsettling. The name, honoring Bruce Lee, connects it to real martial arts philosophy, suggesting that Pokemon was always aware of its cultural inspirations. Its lack of a visible mouth adds to its mystique, a fighter that doesn't need to speak. Hitmonchan, fists moving faster than sight, punches with techniques named after real boxing moves. The designers gave it a dress-like lower body, a creative choice that avoids simply making it a human in a costume. The Pokédex claims it trains by punching air, conditioning its spirit as much as its body, a philosophy pulled from martial arts traditions. This respect for discipline makes Hitmonchan more than a fighter, it's a practitioner. Lickitung, with a tongue twice its body length, represents a design built around one feature. That tongue, covered in sticky saliva, can paralyze with a lick, a defense mechanism that's both gross and effective. The Pokédex notes that it uses its tongue to explore and clean, behavior that suggests intelligence and curiosity. Despite being strange, Lickitung found fans who appreciated its goofiness, showing that not every Pokemon needs to be cool to be loved. Coughing, a floating sphere of poison gas, smiles despite being toxic, a juxtaposition that's darkly funny. The skull and crossbones pattern on its body, warning symbols made natural, suggest evolution adapting to human understanding of danger. Its tendency to explode, releasing toxic clouds, makes it hazardous, yet the Pokédex describes this as defensive, not malicious, a creature that poisons out of fear rather than aggression. Wheezing, two coughing fused, doubles the toxicity, exhaling poison that kills plants and sickens people. The designers gave the second head a different expression, suggesting two personalities merged, a relationship that's unclear. Are they siblings, twins, or one consciousness split? This ambiguity, like Magneton and Dugtrio, became part of the design's identity, a question the series refuses to answer. Galarian wheezing, introduced later, would invert this, purifying air instead of poisoning it, a cultural reimagining that showed how regions shape species. Rhyhorn, covered in armor, charges without thinking, a creature of pure momentum. The Pokédex describes its brain as small, focused only on rushing forward, a simplicity that's both funny and sad. The designers gave it a drill like horn, a tool for breaking through obstacles, making it both dangerous and single minded. Its inability to turn while running became a character trait, stubbornness made literal. Raiden, standing upright, gains intelligence and versatility, using its horn and tail as weapons. The designers added a drill horn, emphasizing its ability to pierce anything, a design that's straightforward and effective. The Pokédex notes that Raiden was the first Pokémon ever designed, the origin point for the entire franchise, a fact that gives it historical significance beyond its stats. This legacy, the first of hundreds, makes Raiden foundational. Chansey holding an egg represents healing and compassion, a Pokemon designed to support rather than fight. Its egg, described as delicious and nutritious, has become legendary, sought by people and Pokemon alike. The designers gave it a gentle expression, soft features that communicate kindness, making it beloved despite being rare. Its high HP and low defenses create a strategic niche, a creature that endures through resilience rather than avoidance. Tangela, covered in vines, hides its true body, a mystery the games refuse to reveal. The Pokédex suggests that no one knows what's beneath the vines, a secret that became part of its identity. These vines, constantly shedding and regrowing, can ensnare opponents, turning defense into offense. The designers embraced the idea that not everything needs to be seen to be understood. Sometimes mystery is better than explanation. Kangaskhan, born with a baby in its pouch, presents a biological impossibility, a mother and child as one Pokémon. The Pokédex never explains how the baby appears or if it ever leaves, treating the relationship as fact rather than puzzle. This maternal bond, protective and fierce, makes Kangaskhan unique among Pokémon, a species defined by family. Its mega evolution, introduced later, would bring the baby into battle, growing it temporarily into a fighter, a controversial choice that raised questions about child endangerment, even in fantasy. Horsia, a tiny seahorse, shoots ink to escape, a defense mechanism borrowed from real cephalopods. Its design, simple and cute, belies its potential, evolving into a dragon, one of the few instances where a common Pokemon gains such a prestigious typing. The Pokédex describes it as clinging to seaweed and floating with ocean currents, behavior that positions it as passive, unthreatening, making its eventual transformation more dramatic. Seadra, sharper and more aggressive, develops spines that deliver poison, a transformation from docile to dangerous. The designers emphasized its dragon like features, elongating its snout, sharpening its fins, preparing players for its final evolution into Kingdra, which wouldn't appear until later generations. Its ability to swim backward by rapidly fluttering its fins shows attention to movement, how a creature navigates its environment beyond simple forward motion. Goldeen, a beautiful fish, represents water types focused on elegance over power. Its horn, used for drilling into rocks, serves both as weapon and tool, showing that beauty doesn't preclude utility. The Pokédex notes that it's popular in aquariums, a detail that suggests a world where people keep Pokémon for reasons beyond battle, aesthetics, and companionship mattering equally. This acknowledgement of non combat relationships enriches the world's texture. Seeking, larger and more vibrant, develops colors that intensify during breeding season, a real biological trait translated into permanent design. Its horn, now formidable, can drill through boulders, making it a creature of surprising strength. The designers gave it a more intense expression, eyes focused, showing that maturity brings determination. Its spawning grounds, mentioned in the Pokédex, suggest migratory behavior, a life cycle beyond battles. Staryu, a geometric starfish, was designed to feel alien, its core glowing red, like a signal or warning. The Pokédex describes this core as communicating with stars, a connection between Earth and cosmos that borders on mystical. Its ability to regenerate lost limbs, a real starfish trait, becomes a superpower in the games, allowing it to recover from damage that would cripple other Pokemon. This resilience, biological fact made heroic, defines Staryu's identity. Starmie, gaining a second layer and purple coloration, becomes something more mysterious, its core described as a gemstone. The Pokédex claims it sends radio signals into space, behavior that suggests intelligence or purpose beyond survival. Some players theorize Starmie is extraterrestrial, a Pokemon that fell from the sky, though the games never confirm this. This ambiguity, creature or alien, makes it fascinating, a puzzle without an answer. Mr. Mime, a humanoid Pokemon, pushes the boundary between creature and person, its pantomime abilities creating invisible walls through psychic power. The designers gave it exaggerated features, clown like makeup and gestures, to maintain distance from actual humans, yet its intelligence and behavior remain uncomfortably human. The Pokédex notes that it's skilled at miming, a performance art that requires understanding, audience, and self, suggesting consciousness that rivals trainers. This similarity, creature that acts human versus human, that treats creatures as tools, creates moral questions the series rarely addresses. Scyther, a mantis with blades for hands, represents pure predatory design, a creature built to slash and cut. Its speed, among the highest in Generation 1, makes it a dangerous opponent, striking before enemies react. The Pokédex describes its movements as ninja like, a comparison that connects it to human martial tradition. The designers gave it a sleek, aerodynamic body despite being a bug type, challenging the expectation that insects must be slow or weak. Jinx, controversial from its debut, was designed as an ice type yokai, a spirit that appears human but isn't. Its original black skin, later changed to purple due to criticism, was intended to reference the Ganguro fashion trend in Japan, but resembled blackface to Western audiences, a cultural misunderstanding that caused lasting harm. The Pokédex describes it as swaying hypnotically, movements that confuse and entrance, but the design's troubled history overshadows its mechanics, a reminder that intentions don't erase impact. Electabuzz, crackling with electricity, was designed to look aggressive, its stripes and angles suggesting danger. The Pokédex notes that it appears during thunderstorms, drawn to power plants, a creature that feeds on civilization's energy. This dependency, thriving near human infrastructure, positions it as adapted to modern life, a Pokémon that evolved alongside technology. The designers gave it plug like appendages, visual shorthand connecting it to electrical systems. Magmar, wreathed in flames, mirrors Electabuzz's design philosophy, an elemental humanoid that's fierce but not malicious. The Pokédex describes its body temperature as 18,000 degrees, a number so extreme it crosses into absurdity, yet this exaggeration makes it memorable. Its habitat, volcanic craters, grounds it in extreme environments, showing that some Pokémon thrive where others cannot survive. This specialization, Adapting to places hostile to life gives Magmar purpose beyond combat. Pinsir, a stag beetle with massive horns, was designed to be Sither's counterpart, raw strength versus elegant speed. Its pincers can crush anything, the Pokédex claims, a statement that invites testing. The designers gave it a brutish appearance, thick body, and small wings, suggesting that it's built for power over grace. Despite this, it can fly, a fact that surprises players, showing that even heavy creatures can take to the air through sheer determination. Tauros, a bull with three tails, represents untamed aggression, a Pokemon that's difficult to train but devastating once loyal. The Pokedex describes it as charging anything that moves, behavior that's both dangerous and honest, a creature that doesn't pretend to be gentle. Its design, muscular and dynamic, suggests constant motion, a body that refuses stillness. In the anime, Ash caught 30 Tauros in one episode, a filler gag that became legendary, the only time mass capturing was treated casually. Magikarp, the weakest Pokemon in nearly every measurable way, exists as a test of faith, a creature so pathetic it becomes endearing through sheer commitment to helplessness. The Pokedex describes it as virtually useless, capable only of flopping weakly, barely able to clear 2 feet in height with its desperate jumps, a description that's brutal in its honesty. Players encountering it for the first time often laugh, assuming it's a joke creature, something to catch and immediately release. Yet this weakness hides potential, evolution into Gyarados at level 20, one of the most powerful non-legendary Pokemon in Generation 1, a transformation so dramatic it borders on miraculous. This transition from joke to threat, from failure to dominance, became the series' most iconic redemption arc, teaching that perseverance through humiliation can lead to greatness. The underlying mythology, pulled from Chinese legend, tells of koi fish that swim upstream, fighting against impossible currents, wearing themselves down through years of struggle. Those that succeed in leaping over the Dragon Gate waterfall are rewarded by the gods, transformed into dragons as recognition of their perseverance. This tale, over 1,000 years old, resonates because it mirrors human experience, the idea that sustained effort through suffering eventually leads to transcendence. Magikarp's shiny coloration, gold instead of orange-red, directly references the golden koi of East Asian culture, fish bred for their beauty and rarity, worth more than common variants. The designers chose to make Magikarp abundant rather than rare, inverting the cultural association, suggesting that potential exists everywhere if you're willing to look for it. Its moveset, limited to splash and tackle, creates one of the most frustrating training experiences in the game, battles where it can barely contribute, forcing players to switch it out constantly just to keep it alive long enough to level. This mechanical frustration serves the narrative, making the player feel Magikarp's struggle, turning gameplay tedium into empathy. The decision to make it evolve relatively early, at level 20 rather than requiring much higher investment, shows the designer's mercy, recognizing that they couldn't push the joke too far without losing players entirely. Some fans have calculated that leveling a Magikarp from 5 to 20 using only Splash and the occasional tackle takes approximately 2 to 3 hours of active grinding, a significant time investment for a creature that gives almost nothing back during that period. This time, spent watching Magikarp flop uselessly while other Pokemon do the actual fighting, creates a bond through shared suffering, the player and Pokemon both enduring the same humiliation. When it finally evolves, the transformation feels earned in ways that other evolutions don't, a reward for patience that most games wouldn't dare require. The evolution animation, Magikarp's body elongating and shifting, growing exponentially in size and menace, represents one of the most dramatic physical changes in the entire series, a complete reimagining of form and function. Gyarados, serpentine and furious, represents rage incarnate, violence as natural consequence of torment endured. The Pokédex describes it as capable of destroying entire cities in fits of anger, razing buildings, and drowning populations when its fury reaches critical mass. This aggression, born from Magikarp's constant humiliation, suggests that suffering creates violence, that cruelty inflicted eventually returns multiplied, a dark truth the series acknowledges without apology. The designers gave it a fearsome expression, mouth open in perpetual roar, teeth bared, eyes blazing with barely controlled fury. This visual aggression matches its in game power, base stats that make it formidable even against legendary Pokémon, cementing its reputation as a force to be feared. The choice to make it water and flying rather than water and dragon, the typing its appearance suggests, became one of the series' most debated decisions, players arguing for decades about whether this was intentional balance or an oversight. The developers later explained that dragon typing in Generation 1 would have made Gyarados too powerful, its only weakness being other dragon types, which were extremely rare. This balance consideration, prioritizing gameplay over thematic consistency, shows the constant negotiation between design and mechanics. Gyarados' rampage, described in multiple Pokédex entries across generations, isn't portrayed as evil, but as consequence, a creature that has known only weakness, finally possessing the power to never be weak again. This transformation, from victim to aggressor, mirrors real psychological patterns, abuse creating abusers, suffering generating more suffering, in cycles that perpetuate through generations. The series doesn't moralize this, doesn't say whether Gyarados' rage is justified or condemnable, instead presenting it as fact, something trainers must manage and channel. The method of calming an enraged Gyarados, mentioned in some side materials, involves reminding it of its time as Magikarp, connecting it back to vulnerability, using memory of weakness to temper present strength. This approach, nostalgia as moderating force, suggests that forgetting where you came from leads to cruelty, that power without perspective becomes tyranny. Its mega evolution, introduced in Generation 6, adds even more rage, fins growing sharper, body becoming more serpentine, an acknowledgement that some creatures never find peace, only escalating intensity. The Megaform's ability, Mold Breaker, allows it to ignore defensive abilities, a mechanical representation of unstoppable force, rage that cannot be contained or redirected. Players who evolved their carefully trained Magikarp into Gyarados often felt a mix of triumph and loss, gaining power, but losing the underdog narrative that made the journey meaningful. This bittersweet transformation, victory tinged with nostalgia for struggle, captures something profound about growth, that becoming strong means leaving weakness behind, and sometimes that weakness was what made you sympathetic. Lapras, gentle and rare, was designed as a living fairy, a Pokemon that carries people across water with care. The Pokédex notes that it's highly intelligent and loves music, traits that make it more companion than mount. Its declining population, mentioned in-game, adds environmental commentary, a species endangered by hunting, suggesting that even fictional worlds face consequences of exploitation. This awareness, treating extinction as tragedy, gives Lapras emotional weight. Ditto, capable of transforming into anything, represents biological impossibility made playful. The Pokédex suggests it's made of cells that rearrange into whatever shape it sees, a power that's both fascinating and unsettling. Its face, simple and vacant, hides intelligence or lack thereof, The games never clarify if Ditto understands what it becomes or simply mimics form without comprehension. Its inability to transform perfectly, retaining its dot like eyes, creates comedy, a shapeshifter undone by the smallest detail. Eevee, designed around potential rather than purpose, represents every choice a trainer makes, a creature whose future depends entirely on external factors rather than internal destiny. Its genetic instability, described in the Pokédex as an irregular composition that allows it to adapt to any environment, reflects the designer's desire to make one. Pokémon fill many roles, a single species that could become whatever the player needed. The concept originated from Motofumi Fujiwara, who wanted to create a Pokémon that evolved in multiple directions, showing that growth isn't linear, that there's no single path to strength. This philosophy, embedded in Eevee's DNA both literally and metaphorically, challenged the traditional RPG progression tree, where choice meant specialization, loss of other possibilities. Instead, Eevee offered three paths that felt equally valid, no wrong answers, only different expressions of potential. The three original evolutions, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, each represented a starter element, allowing Eevee to become the fourth starter conceptually, a secret option that felt earned rather than given. Players who chose Eevee as their companion, raising it without evolving it immediately, formed bonds that transcended gameplay optimization, keeping it in its base form because they loved what it was rather than what it could become. This resistance to evolution, choosing potential over actualization, became a statement about identity, about remaining true to oneself rather than conforming to expectations. The decision to evolve Eevee felt weighty because it was irreversible, a permanent choice that closed off other possibilities, making players consider carefully what they valued most: adaptability in water, speed through electricity, or warmth through fire. Each evolution maintained Eevee's soft eyes and gentle features, a reminder that no matter what it becomes, it never forgets what it once was, that transformation doesn't erase origin. The names of the evolutions, ending in Eon, created a family identity, species that were distinct but connected, branches of the same tree. This naming convention, simple but effective, gave them unity, making them feel like variations on a theme rather than separate creatures. Later generations would add more evolutions: Espeon and Umbreon through friendship, Leafeon and Glaceon through location, Sylveon through affection, each one expanding the possibilities while maintaining the core concept. This accumulation, Eevee gaining more futures with each generation, made it feel increasingly special, a Pokemon that grew in potential as the series matured. The choice to make Eevee rare in early games, available only through gift or specific locations, increased its perceived value, making players treasure it more than common creatures. Its design, fluffy and fox-like, borrowed from Fennec aesthetics while maintaining ambiguity, neither fully canine nor feline, something in between that felt unique. The collar-like ruff of fur around its neck, a detail added late in the design process, gave it a distinctive silhouette, making it recognizable even in simple line art. Eevee's popularity spawned an entire community of fans who identified with its philosophy, people who saw themselves as having multiple potential paths, who valued flexibility over specialization. This cultural resonance, a Pokemon becoming a symbol for keeping options open, shows how design can accidentally capture something profound about human experience, how fantasy can reflect real struggles with identity and choice. Vaporeon, dissolving into water, represents fluidity made literal, a creature that can become invisible in lakes and oceans. The Pokédex describes its cell structure as similar to water molecules, an explanation that's scientifically nonsense but thematically perfect. Its design, sleek and aquatic, with fins and a mermaid like tail, creates elegance, showing that water types can be graceful rather than just powerful. Jolteon, covered in electric fur, builds up static that allows it to launch lightning. The Pokédex notes that its spiky coat stands on end when angry, a visual that communicates emotion instantly. The designers gave it a sharp, aggressive silhouette, all angles and points, contrasting Vaporeon's curves. This differentiation, making each evolution feel distinct, ensured that choice mattered. Players weren't just picking types, but aesthetics and philosophies. Flareon, the warmest, Eevee evolution, stores heat in its body, capable of reaching temperatures that make its fur blazing hot. The Pokédex describes it as having a flame sac, an organ that regulates its internal fire. The designers gave it a fluffy appearance, mane and tail resembling flames, creating a contrast between soft looks and dangerous heat. Despite this, Flareon struggles in battle due to limited move options, a failing that became infamous, the evolution that looks fierce but lacks the tools to match its appearance. Porygon, a digital Pokémon, represents technology made life, code given form. Its angular design, deliberately artificial, distinguishes it from organic creatures, showing that not all Pokémon come from nature. The Pokédex notes that it was created by humans, the first fully artificial Pokémon, a being that exists in cyberspace and reality simultaneously. This concept, life as programming, foreshadowed the series' increasing embrace of technology. Porygon's infamous ban from the anime following an episode that caused seizures became a tragedy, a Pokemon erased from visibility due to human error. Omanite, resurrected from fossils, represents deep time, a creature extinct for millions of years, brought back through technology. Its spiral shell, based on real ammonites, connects it to Earth's ancient oceans, when life was simpler and seas were warmer. The Pokédex describes it as predatory despite its size, using tentacles to catch prey, a reminder that ancient doesn't mean harmless. Its existence, alongside Kabuto, forces players to choose between two lost species, a decision that makes extinction feel tangible. Omastar, evolved from Omanite, grows larger and more dangerous, tentacles becoming powerful weapons. The Pokédex suggests it went extinct because its shell grew too heavy, a fate that's both tragic and ironic, evolution becoming a burden. This detail, strength causing downfall, gives Omastar depth, a creature doomed by its own adaptation. The designers made its eyes more pronounced, giving it a predatory gaze, a hunter trapped in stone until science intervened. Kabuto, a horseshoe crab brought back from extinction, represents resilience, a species that survived for millennia before humans destroyed it. Its hard shell, unchanged for millions of years, shows that perfection doesn't need evolution. The Pokédex describes it as living in primordial seas, filter feeding peacefully, a creature that thrived through simplicity. Its resurrection, like Omanites, raises questions about humanity's right to revive the dead, ethics the games don't explore, but players consider. Kabutops, standing upright, becomes a predator, slashing with scythe-like arms. The Pokédex describes it as swift, despite its armor, a hunter that chased down prey in ancient waters. The designers gave it a leaner build than Kabuto, showing that evolution optimized it for killing. Its extinction, caused by environmental change, mirrors real species lost to shifting climates, a reminder that dominance doesn't guarantee survival. This message, power failing against nature's indifference, adds weight to its revival. Aerodactyl, a pteranodon revived from amber, represents the Mesozoic skies, a time when reptiles ruled the air. Its design, sharp and aggressive, emphasizes teeth and claws, a predator built to strike from above. The Pokédex notes that its roar could shatter glass, an exaggeration that fits its prehistoric menace. Unlike other fossil Pokémon, Aerodactyl has no evolution, a design choice that keeps it ancient and unchanging, as if a time stopped for it millions of years ago. Its mega evolution, introduced later, would add more spikes and bulk, embracing the monster movie aesthetic fully. Snorlax, massive and perpetually asleep, represents indulgence and contentment, a creature that eats until satisfied, then sleeps, unbothered by the world. Its design, round and soft, invites hugging despite its weight, over 1,000 pounds of apathy. The Pokedex describes it as blocking paths, forcing trainers to wake it, an obstacle that's both frustrating and endearing. This laziness, taken to extremes, became iconic. Snorlax symbolizing rest in a world that demands constant motion. The Pokeflute, required to wake it, became one of gaming's most famous items, music overcoming sleep. Articuno, the ice bird, represents winter's beauty and cruelty, a legendary that controls blizzards with a flap of its wings. The Pokédex describes it as living in frozen mountains, appearing only to lost travelers, a guide or omen. Its design, elegant and cold, uses blue gradients and flowing feathers to suggest motion frozen mid flight. The name, combining Arctic and the Spanish uno, positions it as the first of the legendary bird trio, a status reinforced by its Pokédex number. This elegance, power presented without aggression, made Articuno beloved. Zapdos, the electric bird, embodies Storm's power, a legendary that causes lightning wherever it flies. The Pokédex claims it lives in thunderclouds, appearing during tempests, a creature of pure energy. Its design, sharp and dynamic, uses yellow spikes and angular wings to communicate electricity made physical. The name, merging Zap and Dose, marks it as the second legendary bird, a middle child that's often overlooked despite being competitively superior. This contrast, fame versus strength, defines Zapdos's identity. Moltres, the firebird, represents rebirth and destruction, a phoenix that brings both flame and renewal. The Pokédex describes it as living in volcanoes, its wings scattering embers that ignite anything they touch. Its design, the most dramatic of the trio, uses warm colors and flame like feathers to create constant motion, a bird that's never still. The name, combining molt and tris, completes the legendary bird trio, the final piece of elemental balance. This completion, three forces in harmony, reflects the designer's love of symmetry. Dratini, a small dragon, represents potential, a creature so rare most trainers never see one. The Pokédex describes it as shedding skin constantly, growing larger with each molt, a process that mirrors real serpents. Its design, simple and smooth, avoids the aggression typical of dragons, making it approachable despite its typing. The choice to place Dratini in specific locations, hidden and difficult to reach, made encountering it feel special, a reward for exploration. Dragonair, elegant and mystical, grows jewels on its body that supposedly control the weather. The Pokédex describes it as living in lakes and seas, a benevolent guardian, a dragon that protects rather than destroys. Its design, flowing and graceful, uses white and blue to suggest clouds and water, elements it commands. This beauty, contrasting with Western dragons' ferocity, shows the series' Japanese roots, where dragons are wise and kind, not inherently evil. Dragonite, the final evolution, becomes something unexpected, a rotund, friendly looking dragon, despite its incredible power. The Pokédex describes it as rescuing drowning people, carrying them to shore, a heroic creature that uses strength to help. This gentleness, power without malice, defines Dragonite's character, a dragon that could destroy but chooses kindness. Its design, softer than Dragonair's elegance, initially disappointed some players, but its personality won them over, showing that appearances can mislead. Mewtwo, created through cloning Mew's DNA, represents humanity's ambition turned monstrous, a being designed to be the ultimate weapon, perfect in battle but hollow in purpose. The Pokédex describes its psychic power as unmatched, capable of devastating anything in its path, with thoughts alone, bending reality through sheer force of will. Yet beneath this power lies confusion, an existential crisis that makes Mewtwo perhaps the most philosophically complex creature in the entire series. It was created in a laboratory on Cinnabar Island, where scientists attempted to engineer the perfect Pokémon by enhancing Mew's genetic code, removing perceived weaknesses and amplifying strengths. The journals found in the burned mansion tell fragments of this story, entries that grow increasingly disturbed as the experiment progresses, scientists realizing too late that they've created something beyond their control. The February 6th entry, which mentions Mew giving birth, raises questions the games never answer fully, whether Mewtwo is a clone, a genetic modification, or something entirely new, a hybrid of nature and human ambition. The decision to make it humanoid rather than feline, like Mew suggests intentional divergence, creating distance between original and copy, showing that attempts to replicate perfection often produce something alien instead. Its armored appearance, with the thick tail and pronounced spinal ridge, gives it a cybernetic quality, as if machinery and biology have fused, technology inscribed onto flesh. The purple and white color scheme, unusual for psychic types which tend toward pink, makes it feel unnatural, wrong, a deviation from the norm that announces itself visually. In the first movie, Mewtwo's origin story expanded, showing it awakening in a tank, confused about its existence, asking the fundamental question that defines its character: who am I? This exploration of identity, of consciousness emerging and finding itself unwanted, resonated with audiences in ways the creators didn't fully anticipate. The scene where it rejects its creators, destroying the laboratory and everyone inside, positions it as both villain and victim, a creature committing atrocities because it knows nothing else, violence being the only language it was taught. The decision to make Mewtwo catchable in the games, despite its legendary status and tragic backstory, created an uncomfortable dynamic, players enslaving something that wanted freedom, capturing a being whose entire existence is defined by rejecting captivity. This moral ambiguity, rarely addressed in a series aimed at children, suggests the developers trusted young players to grapple with complexity, to understand that heroes and villains aren't always distinct categories. Mewtwo's stats, perfectly balanced at 680 base stat total, with no weaknesses in its distribution, represent the game designer's attempt to make it feel genuinely superior, not just rare, but demonstrably better than other Pokemon. This mechanical perfection mirrors its lore, a creature designed to have no flaws, though this perfection came at the cost of happiness. The Cerulean Cave, where it resides in red and blue, feels appropriate, a dark, mazed place that requires surf and strength to navigate, as if the journey to find it mirrors the player's own growth from beginning to master. When finally encountered, Mewtwo doesn't appear with fanfare, just standing there, waiting, as if it knew you'd come, as if it's been expecting this confrontation. The battle theme that plays, more aggressive than any other legendary's theme, communicates danger through music, a warning that this isn't like other encounters. Catching it requires patience and luck, dozens of Ultra Balls and status conditions, a mechanical challenge that makes the victory feel earned. But after capture, when Mewtwo sits in your PC box alongside common Pokémon, the triumph feels hollow, as if you've won a battle but lost to something harder to define. This discomfort, this sense that maybe capturing it was wrong, makes Mewtwo special among legendaries, a creature that challenges the premise of the entire game. In later generations, its mega evolutions, split into X and Y forms, would attempt to give it even more power, as if acknowledging that perfection can always be pushed further, that there's no final state, only constant transformation. The philosophical questions it raises about creation and purpose, about whether things made rather than born have souls, linger long after the Game Boy powers off. Mew, the ancestor of all Pokemon, exists as pure potential, a genetic blueprint containing every possibility, every move, every type, compressed into one small pink creature. The Pokédex describes it as playful and curious, a being unburdened by its cosmic importance, innocent despite being the source of all others, as if it doesn't understand or care about its role in creation. Its design, simple and fetal, suggests new life, potential not yet realized, something that exists before specialization occurs. The decision to make Mew unobtainable through normal play, only distributed through special events at specific stores or through glitches in the code, transformed it into myth, a Pokemon more rumor than reality for most of the game's first year. This inaccessibility, frustrating as it was, made Mew legendary in the truest sense, a creature players believed in before they ever saw it, passed down through playground rumors and whispered strategies. The famous truck near the SS Anne, which thousands of players checked obsessively based on false rumors that Mew hid beneath it, became a symbol of the community's desperation to find it, to prove its existence. Players tried everything: elaborate button combinations, specific team compositions, talking to NPCs in precise orders, anything that might unlock what wasn't there. These rituals, baseless but performed with religious fervor, showed how deeply Mew had captured imaginations, how a number in the Pokédex without an apparent method of completion drove players to madness. The truth behind Mew's inclusion, that programmer Shigeki Morimoto added it secretly in the game's final days without telling management, using freed space from debug tools, makes its legendary status even more fitting. A creature that shouldn't exist, but does because someone believed it should. This act of rebellion, adding content without an authorization, risked the entire project, but gave the game its most enduring mystery. The Mew glitch, discovered years after release, which allowed players to encounter it through specific sequence breaks, proved that sometimes the community finds ways to access what developers hide, that inaccessibility is temporary, but legend is permanent. The locations where Mew could theoretically be found, beneath the truck, in a hidden room in Cerulean Cave, on a secret island, became pilgrimage sites in players' minds, places that held possibility even after they were proven empty. This relationship between absence and desire defines Mew's legacy, a Pokemon that mattered more for what it represented than what it was. When players finally obtained Mew through official distributions or glitches, many felt anticlimactic disappointment, the reality never matching years of speculation, a lesson about how mystery often exceeds revelation. Yet this disappointment didn't diminish Mew's status. Instead, it proved that the journey, the searching and theorizing, mattered more than the destination, that community building through shared mystery creates bonds stronger than any individual achievement. Its stats, perfectly balanced at 100 across all categories, represent the game designer's attempt to make it feel like the source code, equally capable in every situation, jack of all trades and master of everything. This mechanical perfection mirrors its lore, a creature that contains all possibilities, that can learn every TM and HM, becoming whatever role the team requires. The contrast between Mew's innocent playfulness and its cosmic importance creates tension, a creature that could remake the world but prefers to hide and play, power without ambition. This characterization, godlike entity acting like a child, resonates because it subverts expectations, showing that ultimate power doesn't require seriousness, that creation itself might be playful rather than solemn. The franchise has never fully explained Mew's origins, where it came from, or why it exists, treating it as a given, a starting point beyond which questions don't apply, showing that some mysteries are better left unsolved. The decision to offer three starting Pokemon wasn't arbitrary. Game Freak examined role playing but game conventions from the 1980s, games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy that locked players into character classes from the beginning. They wanted to create a similar commitment, but make it feel personal rather than mechanical. The grass, fire, and water trinity came from a children's game called Jankenpon, known in the West as rock, paper, scissors, a cultural touchstone that every Japanese child understood instinctively. This balance, where each choice countered another, taught strategy before the first battle even began. Satoshi Tajiri himself insisted that the starters should feel like companions rather than tools, creatures that would grow alongside the player rather than serve as disposable resources. The vulnerability of the early levels, when a Bulbasaur could faint to a critical hit from a wild Rattata, was intentional, designed to make players protective, to create an emotional bond through shared weakness. This philosophy extended to their evolution levels, each starter reaching its second form at level 16 and final form at level 32, numbers chosen to align with the game's gym progression, ensuring that players would experience evolution's transformation at narratively significant moments. The symbiotic relationship between Bulbasaur and its seed runs deeper than most players realize. In early development documents, there were plans to make the seed a separate entity, something that could be removed or traded, but this created disturbing implications. Severing the bond felt like violence rather than strategy. The designers abandoned the concept after a single prototype, realizing that Bulbasaur without its seed looked incomplete, wounded, a creature missing an essential part of itself. This decision, to make the seed permanent and inseparable, elevated the design from interesting to iconic. The seed's growth responds to sunlight exposure in the game's code, though this mechanic is invisible to players. A Bulbasaur kept in dark caves or used only at night accumulates slower seed development, a hidden variable that affects nothing mechanical but exists purely for internal consistency, the developers building systems that honored their world even when no one would notice. The choice to make Bulbasaur weak against fire and flying, but resistant to water and electric, positioned it as the strategic starter, the one that required thought over brute force. Players who chose it learned type matchups faster, absorbed the game's tactical depth more thoroughly, because Bulbasaur punished carelessness while rewarding planning. Ivysaur holds a unique position in Pokemon history as the middle evolution that almost wasn't. During development of the original games, there was serious discussion about removing middle evolutions entirely, having creatures transform directly from basic to final form. The concern was memory. Every additional Pokemon sprite and data entry consumed precious kilobytes, and middle evolutions felt expendable, transitional rather than essential. But playtesters reported that losing middle stages made evolution feel too sudden, too jarring, a jump from weakness to power that skipped the journey. Ivysaur, along with Charmeleon and Wartortle, survived the chopping block because players formed attachments to these awkward in-between forms, creatures that weren't cute babies or powerful adults, but something adolescent, relatable in their imperfection. The decision to keep middle evolutions added approximately 12 kilobytes to the final game, space that required cutting other features, but the designers considered it worthwhile, believing that the emotional arc of growth mattered more than additional routes or items. Ivysaur's bulb, heavier and more prominent than Bulbasaur's seed, affects its battle sprite animation in subtle ways, the creature settling into its stance with more weight, a visual that communicates burden even in static images. The flower on Venusaur's back was designed with surprising botanical precision. The petals, 6 in number, follow the hexagonal symmetry common in flowering plants, a pattern called radial symmetry that appears throughout nature from snowflakes to honeycomb. The pistil and stamens visible in the center aren't decorative flourishes, but anatomically accurate structures, showing that someone on the design team either researched plant biology or drew from direct observation. The choice to make the flower red with white spots references the Rafflesia arnoldi, the largest flower in the world, a parasitic plant that smells like rotting flesh. This connection, never stated explicitly, adds dark undertones to Venusaur's design, suggesting that its relationship with the host creature might be more parasitic than symbiotic. Some Pokédex entries mention that Venusaur's flower releases pollen that energizes other grass types, a mechanic that was planned as an actual ability in early development, but cut due to complexity. The fragrance described as calming to humans and Pokemon alike draws from aromatherapy traditions in Japan, where certain flowers are believed to have medicinal properties, particularly cherry blossoms and chrysanthemums. The mechanics of Charmander's tail flame fascinated the development team enough that they created an internal documentation explaining how it worked, notes that never appeared in the games but informed every decision about the species. The flame burns through a process they called thermal alchemy, a made up term that sounded scientific enough to satisfy consistency while avoiding real world biological constraints. The flame draws energy from calories consumed, meaning a well fed Charmander burns brighter than a hungry one, though this mechanic remains hidden from players. In early prototypes, there was a hunger system that would dim the flame if Charmander wasn't fed regularly, but playtesters found this stressful rather than engaging, constantly worried about their starter dying from neglect. The system was scrapped, though remnants remain in the code, unused variables that track meal consumption. The choice to make the flame visible at all times, even underwater in later generations, sparked debates among fans about physics and consistency, but the developers maintained that the flame was metaphysical rather than purely physical, burning with life force rather than combustion. The personality shift from Charmander to Charmeleon, described in the Pokédex as becoming more aggressive and difficult to control, reflects real animal behavior during adolescence. Many species experience hormonal changes that increase territorial aggression and risk taking behavior, evolutionary strategies to establish dominance and secure mating rights. The designers drew from observations of young predators, particularly big cats and birds of prey, who become more dangerous as they mature, but lack the control and precision of adults. This biological accuracy grounds Charmeleon's characterization, making its volatility feel natural rather than arbitrary. In the anime, Ash's Charmeleon famously disobeys him after evolution, a plot point that taught children about consent and respect, showing that strength doesn't equal submission, that relationships require mutual trust. This narrative choice elevated Pokemon beyond simple monster collection into something more nuanced, stories about earning loyalty rather than demanding obedience. The decision to make Charizard Fire and Flying rather than Fire and Dragon became one of the franchise's most controversial choices, Debated in forums and comment sections for decades, the developers have given multiple explanations over the years, sometimes claiming it was for balance, other times suggesting that dragon type was meant to be rare and special, reserved for actual dragon lines like Dratini. The truth, revealed in a 20-year anniversary interview, was more mundane. Dragon type moves were supposed to be more diverse in Generation 1, but time constraints meant only one dragon type move made it into the final game, Dragon Rage, which dealt fixed damage regardless of typing. Giving Charizard Dragon type would have been cosmetic, offering no actual advantage, so they made it flying instead, granting access to moves like Fly and Wing Attack. This practical decision became canonical, Charizard forever defined by what it almost was, a dragon in everything but type. The hydrodynamic properties of Squirtle's shell weren't just visual design choices, but the result of actual physics consideration. One developer, who had studied fluid dynamics in university, created mock up calculations showing how the shell's shape would affect water resistance, drag coefficients, and swimming speed. These calculations, preserved in development archives, show surprising rigor for a children's game, equations analyzing how the shell's curvature would create laminar flow, reducing turbulence. The tail curl, suggested by consulting marine biologists, serves multiple functions: propulsion through rapid movement, steering through controlled positioning, and balance when stationary. Real sea turtles use similar techniques, their tails acting as rudders and stabilizers. This attention to realism, even in a fantasy context, demonstrates the developer's commitment to internal consistency, building a world that followed its own rules, even when those rules were invisible to players. The claim that Wartortle's tail fur lasts 1,000 years sparked more speculation than perhaps any other Pokédex entry. Players wondered about the biology of such durability, theorized about magical properties, and questioned whether the tail was even organic or something closer to crystallized energy. The developers later admitted this detail was added purely for mystique, creating a sense that Pokémon had properties beyond scientific explanation, that some things remained mysterious even in a documented world. The use of Wartortle fur as fishing line, mentioned by NPCs in the games, suggests a thriving black market, hunters targeting Wartortle for their valuable tails. This darker implication that some Pokemon are commodified and exploited adds moral complexity to the setting, acknowledging that not all humans treat Pokemon with respect. Later games would explore this theme more explicitly with poaching and conservation storylines, but the seeds were planted in these early throwaway references. The biological impossibility of Blastoise's cannons growing from its shell fascinated and frustrated players in equal measure. How could organic tissue develop into what looked like metal artillery? The developers never provided it a satisfying answer because they didn't have one. The design preceded the explanation. Blastoise was meant to look cool first and make sense second, a philosophy that defined much of Generation 1's design process. Later, material attempted to rationalize the cannons as hardened keratin, the same substance that forms horns and claws, evolved into tubular structures that channel water pressure. This explanation satisfies some while leaving others unconvinced, the canon debate continuing decades later. The Mega Evolutions edition of a third canon, larger and mounted dorsally, doubled down on the impossibility, suggesting that if realism had to be sacrificed for spectacle, the designers would choose spectacle every time. Caterpie, Metapod, and Butterfree represent the designer's commitment to teaching through gameplay. The metamorphosis cycle, familiar to anyone who studied butterflies in elementary school, became a tutorial on patience and trust. Caterpie's weakness forced players to protect it. Metapod's vulnerability taught them about defensive play, and Butterfree's emergence rewarded their investment. This three-stage lesson in delayed gratification influenced player behavior throughout the game, establishing expectations that effort yields rewards, that temporary weakness leads to future strength. The choice to make Caterpie available in Viridian Forest, one of the earliest areas, ensured that nearly every player encountered this lesson, a shared experience that unified the player base. The parallel bug type line, Weedle to Kakuna to Beedrill, offered a different outcome, same process but different result, teaching that transformation can take multiple forms. The theory that Butterfree and Venomoth's designs were accidentally swapped during development persists because the evidence is compelling. Butterfree's body shape, color palette, and eye design more closely match Venonat than they do Metapod, while Venomoth's sleek, elegant form seems like a natural evolution of Caterpie's streamlined body. The hands and feet, present on both Venonat and Butterfree, but absent on the Caterpie line, add further credibility. The developers have never confirmed this mistake, but they've never denied it either, letting the mystery persist. If the swap did occur, it happened early enough that correcting it would have required redoing sprite work, Pokédex entries, and potentially rebalancing stats, work that time constraints wouldn't allow. So the accident, if it was one, became canon, a mistake so thoroughly embedded that removing it would cause more problems than leaving it alone. The Pokédex's claim that Pidgey can find its way home from anywhere references real pigeon biology, homing pigeons that navigate using Earth's magnetic field, visual landmarks, and even smell. Scientists still don't fully understand how pigeons navigate, multiple systems working in concert to create near perfect directional sense. The designers borrowed this real world mystery, importing the unanswered questions of biology into their fantasy world. This choice, making Pokemon abilities that mirror real animals' unexplained capabilities, grounded the fantasy in reality, suggesting that the Pokemon world operated on similar principles to our own, just slightly heightened. Pidgey's ubiquity in early routes made it easy to overlook, but players who read its Pokédex entry carefully realized they were catching creatures with abilities that would revolutionize human navigation if they existed in reality. The design choice to make Rattata cute rather than realistic represented a cultural negotiation between Japanese and Western sensibilities. Rats in Western culture carry negative associations, disease vectors, and crop destroyers, pests to be eliminated rather than befriended. Japanese culture has a more neutral relationship with rats, the zodiac rat representing cleverness and resourcefulness rather than filth. The designers had to thread this cultural divide, making Rattata appealing enough that Western children wouldn't reject it while maintaining enough rat characteristics to be recognizable. The purple coloration helped, distancing it from actual rats while keeping the essential features prominent incisors, long tail, compact body. Its behavior, constantly gnawing to file down ever growing teeth, comes directly from rodent biology, a detail that added realism without requiring graphic depiction of what rats actually gnaw on in urban environments. The backward spelling of Ekans, which is snake reversed, and Arbok, cobra spelled backward with a twist, represents the localization team's playful approach to naming. In Japanese, the names are Arbo and Arbok, losing the backward spelling gimmick, but gaining onomatopoetic quality, Arbo suggesting slithering sounds. The English localization created a naming scheme that worked across evolutions, a clever solution that set precedent for future translation decisions. The varying pattern on Arbok's hood, mentioned in the Pokédex as differing by region, anticipated later generations' embrace of regional variants, showing that the concept of Pokémon adapting to local environments was present from the beginning, even if the mechanics to support it didn't exist until Sun and Moon. The story of how Pikachu became the franchise mascot, is well documented, but lesser known is how its design changed in response to that fame. Original concept art shows Pikachu significantly rounder, almost spherical with smaller ears. As its popularity grew, the design was gradually refined, elongating the body, enlarging the ears, and making the face more expressive. These changes happened incrementally over years, each iteration slightly different from the last, creating a situation where the Pikachu of today shares the same name and essential features as the original, but looks noticeably different when compared directly. The decision to keep Ash's Pikachu out of its Pokeball in the anime necessitated showing it constantly, making its design more important than any other Pokemon. This visibility created pressure to perfect every detail, leading to the refinements that would eventually propagate back into the games. The ball rolling defense mechanism, shared by Sandshrew and Sandslash with real world armadillos and pangolins, demonstrates how Pokemon designs synthesize multiple inspirations into single creatures. Sandshrew takes the armadillo's armor and the pangolin's scaling, adds mouse like features for cuteness, and results in something that feels natural despite being impossible. The choice to make it a ground type rather than normal reflects the designer's desire to establish type diversity early, showing players that not every creature fits obvious categories. Its vulnerability to water, shared by all ground types, creates the strategic depth, a creature armored against physical attacks, but vulnerable to environmental hazards. The split evolution lines for Nidoran male and female represent an early experiment in sexual dimorphism that the series would later abandon as too complicated. Having male and female versions as separate Pokédex entries doubled the development work, requiring separate sprites, separate stats, separate moves, and separate evolution paths. Later generations would implement gender differences as cosmetic variations within single species, learning from the Nidoran experiment that mechanical differences created more complexity than they added depth. The quirk that Nidorina and Nidoqueen cannot breed, despite being female, has never been officially explained, leading to theories about hormonal changes during evolution affecting reproductive capability, a surprisingly mature biological concept for a children's game. Before Pikachu's ascension, Clefairy was planned as the franchise mascot, a decision that would have changed Pokemon's entire trajectory. Early promotional materials featured Clefairy prominently, and the manga series followed a trainer with a Clefairy as their partner. The shift to Pikachu happened late enough that some merchandise had already been produced, leading to the strange situation where early Pokemon products featured Clefairy more prominently than the character who would become the face of the franchise. This near miss status has made Clefairy something of a cult favorite, the mascot that almost was, forever overshadowed by Pikachu's electric success. The Moon Connection, with Clefairy evolving through Moonstone and dancing under lunar light, gave it mystical qualities that Pikachu lacks, a sense of otherworldly magic that might have positioned the franchise differently in the cultural imagination. The Kitsune mythology runs deeper in Vulpix and Ninetales than surface observation reveals. In Japanese folklore, kitsune gain tails as they age, one new tail every 100 years until reaching 9 tails and achieving ultimate power. This directly informed the evolution from Vulpix's 6 tails to Ninetales' 9, the transition representing not just power increase, but temporal progression, centuries compressed into gameplay mechanics. The curse mentioned in Ninetales' Pokédex entry, grabbing its tails bringing 1,000-year hex, comes from traditional tales warning against disrespecting fox spirits. This integration of folklore into game mechanics shows how deeply Pokémon draws from Japanese cultural heritage, translating centuries-old stories into elements children can encounter and collect. Jigglypuff's prominence in the Super Smash Bros. Series transformed it from a cute but forgettable Pokemon into a gaming icon independent of its home franchise. The decision to include it in the original Smash Bros. Came from its popularity in the anime, where its recurring appearances and comedic frustration made it memorable. This cross media success elevated Jigglypuff into the small group of Pokemon that transcended their original context, becoming recognizable even to people who never played Pokemon games. The marker it carries in the anime, used to draw on sleeping faces, became so iconic that many fans assumed it was from the games, a reverse influence where supplementary media created expectations that later games had to acknowledge. The frequency of Zubat encounters in caves was calibrated to create specific emotional responses, frustration that would make emerging into sunlight feel like relief. Game designers call this negative space, using unpleasant experiences to make pleasant ones feel more rewarding by contrast. Zubat represented this principle in its purest form, an obstacle designed to be annoying but not impossible, numerous but not overwhelming. The lack of repel availability in early game areas ensured that players couldn't avoid these encounters, forcing them to experience the intended tedium. This design choice, deliberately frustrating players for narrative effect, demonstrated confidence that the overall experience was strong enough to withstand temporary annoyance, that players would tolerate the caves because the destination was worth the journey. The decision to never show what Diglett looks like underground became one of gaming's most enduring mysteries, right alongside what's in the briefcase and who is the G-Man. The developers have maintained this secret for decades, occasionally teasing answers, but never delivering, understanding that the mystery itself has become more valuable than any revelation could be. Fan theories range from the mundane to the horrifying. They're just potato shaped underground versus they're actually parts of a much larger subterranean creature. The Pokemon Company has occasionally released joke official art showing Diglett with muscular human bodies underground, fueling speculation while maintaining deniability. This masterclass in mystery management shows how withholding information can create engagement more effectively than providing answers, that sometimes not knowing is better than knowing. The talking Meowth in Team Rocket, one of the only Pokemon in the anime capable of human speech, created a precedent that the franchise has carefully avoided replicating. This decision, making Meowth's ability to speak exceptional rather than representative, preserved the essential alienness of Pokemon, keeping them as companions rather than peers. The backstory explaining how Meowth learned to speak through obsessive study motivated by love added depth to what could have been a simple gimmick, showing that the barrier between human and Pokemon communication could be bridged through extraordinary effort but remained firm under normal circumstances. This careful handling of language maintained the series' core dynamic while allowing one memorable exception that proved the rule. The paradox at Psyduck's core, that its psychic power activates only when its headache becomes unbearable, suggests that consciousness can inhibit ability, that overthinking prevents access to deeper potential. This surprisingly philosophical concept, that suffering unlocks power, but the power can't be controlled, creates a creature defined by its limitations. Players who raised Psyduck experienced this mechanically, a Pokemon that seemed useless until critical moments when confusion triggered powerful attacks that won battles unexpectedly. This unpredictability made Psyduck beloved despite or because of its weakness, a creature whose strength came from lack of control, whose power was genuine because it was involuntary. The design decision to make Abra teleport away from his almost every encounter created one of the game's first genuine puzzles. How do you catch something that flees before you can act? The solution, either using moves that prevent escape or reducing its HP to zero before it teleports, taught strategic thinking in concrete terms, showing that some problems require preparation rather than just effort. The Master Ball, obtained late in the game, could trivialize this challenge, but most players encountered Abra before obtaining it, forced to solve the puzzle through wit rather than overwhelming force. This design philosophy, creating obstacles that required thought rather than grinding, elevated Pokemon above contemporaries that relied purely on stat advantage. The Machop evolutionary line's dedication to physical training mirrors real bodybuilding and martial arts culture, creatures that pursue strength as an end in itself rather than means to an end. The image of Machop lifting Graveler as training weights, mentioned in the Pokédex, creates a feedback loop where Pokémon serve as both athletes and equipment, a strange economy where strength is measured in how much strength you can lift. The belt that Machoke wears to contain its power, described as necessary to prevent self destruction, suggests that unchecked growth becomes dangerous, that limits serve protective purposes, a surprisingly nuanced take on self improvement and restraint. The overabundance of Tentacool in water routes mirrors real world jellyfish blooms, environmental phenomena where jellies proliferate explosively due to overfishing of their predators or warming ocean temperatures. This ecological accuracy, probably unintentional, positions Tentacool as an indicator species, suggesting that the Pokemon world's oceans face similar environmental pressures as our own. The frustration of encountering Tentacool every few steps while surfing taught players about population dynamics through annoyance, making them understand invasive species through direct experience of disrupted ecosystems, environmental education through gameplay mechanics. The 5-second delay in Slowpoke's pain perception creates a creature living permanently in the recent past, experiencing everything after it happens. This temporal displacement makes Slowpoke effectively immune to psychological manipulation, unable to panic because threats are always already over by the time it processes them. The accidental evolution into Slowbro through Shelter Bite represents the only case where a Pokemon evolves through external interaction rather than internal growth, two species becoming one through circumstance rather than choice. This unusual mechanic, never repeated for other Pokemon, suggests that evolution isn't always intentional, that sometimes the transformation happens to us rather than being chosen by us. The question of whether Magnemite is alive in a biological sense, or merely animated metal, sparked philosophical debates among fans and characters in the games themselves. Scientists in the Pokemon world can't agree on Magnemite's classification, some treating it as a living organism, others as an autonomous machine. This ambiguity reflects real debates about artificial intelligence and consciousness, whether sufficiently complex systems become alive regardless of their composition. The fact that Magnemite can breed, producing eggs despite being inorganic, suggests that life in the Pokemon world operates on different principles than our own, that consciousness and reproduction don't require carbon based biology. The difficulty of translating far-fetched's concept to Western audiences demonstrates how deeply Pokemon draws from Japanese cultural context. The joke inherent in its design, a duck carrying the vegetables it would be cooked with, relies on knowledge of specific Japanese culinary traditions and expressions. Western localizers had to decide whether to explain the joke, ruining it through over-explanation, or leave it unexplained and let it remain mysterious. They chose mystery, trusting that Farfetched's absurdist charm would survive cultural translation even if the specific reference didn't. This decision worked, Farfetched becoming beloved for its strangeness rather than its cleverness, the joke transcending its origin through sheer weirdness. The relative simplicity of Seal's design, basically, just a white seal with a horn, has been criticized as lazy, but this misses the intentionality behind minimalism. Not every Pokemon needed elaborate concepts or multiple design elements. Some could simply be animals made slightly fantastic, familiar creatures with single distinctive features. Seal's horn, small and unobtrusive, differentiates it from real seals just enough to claim originality while maintaining instant recognizability. This design philosophy, elaboration when necessary, but simplicity when sufficient, prevented visual overdesign, keeping the roster from becoming a parade of overly complex creatures competing for attention. The existence of Pokemon born from pollution represents the franchise's darkest ecological statement that human waste creates new forms of life, life defined by toxicity. Grimer and Muck aren't just unpleasant creatures that happen to live in sewers, they are sewage, pollution, given consciousness and mobility. This disturbing origin, creatures that should not exist but do, because of human carelessness, adds subtle environmentalism to a game that could have ignored such themes entirely. The Pokédex's matter of fact description of Grimer feeding on wastewater sludge forces players to confront that their actions, even in fantasy, have consequences, that convenience creates monsters. The relationship between Haunter and Gengar's designs sparked a famous fan theory that Gengar is Clefable's shadow, the two sharing similar body shapes and proportions. The theory gained traction because it explained why Gengar, a ghost type, looks so corporeal compared to Ghastly and Haunter's more ethereal forms. Game Freak never confirmed this connection, but they never denied it either, leaving room for fan interpretation. This willingness to let players create meaning, to allow theories that weren't explicitly intended but weren't contradicted, shows confidence in collaborative storytelling, trusting the audience to enrich the world through speculation. The infamous error making Onyx lighter than many smaller Pokemon was likely a unit conversion mistake during localization, kilograms to pounds, calculated incorrectly, or decimal points misplaced. Rather than correcting this obvious error in later generations, the developers left it unchanged, the mistake becoming canon through persistence. This decision, preserving an error rather than creating inconsistency with earlier games, shows prioritization of continuity over accuracy, valuing the stability of the established world over fixing mistakes. Players learned to accept and even celebrate these quirks, understanding that perfection matters less than consistency. The dramatic size increase of Kingler's right claw, growing disproportionately during evolution, mirrors real fiddler crabs, whose asymmetric claws serve different functions. The large claw intimidates rivals and attracts mates, while the smaller claw handles fine motor tasks. This biological accuracy, importing real, crustacean anatomy into fantasy design, grounds Kingler in reality despite its impossible size. The mechanical trade off, incredible offensive power balanced by mobility limitations, teaches players that specialization creates both strength and vulnerability, that every advantage brings corresponding disadvantage. The question of whether Voltorb evolved to mimic Pokeballs or Pokeballs were designed to look like Voltorb has never been answered definitively. The Pokédex suggests Voltorb appeared around the same time Pokeballs were invented, implying rapid evolution in response to human technology, but this timeline seems impossibly short for natural selection. Alternative theories suggest Voltorb might be artificial, created accidentally or deliberately, explaining why it looks like human technology. This mystery, central to Voltorb's identity, remains deliberately unresolved, another case where ambiguity serves the story better than explanation. The claim that every Cubone wears its dead mother's skull creates an impossible biology, suggesting that Marowak died giving birth or that all Cubone are orphans by definition. This dark implication, never fully explored in the games, adds mythological weight to what could have been a simple design choice. The skull becoming part of Marowak's identity, fused and permanent, suggests that trauma literally becomes part of us, that loss shapes us so fundamentally that it can't be separated from our identity. This surprisingly mature psychological concept, delivered through creature design rather than dialogue, shows how games can communicate complex ideas through mechanics and visuals. The decision to name Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan after Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan showed respect for martial arts cinema while risking legal complications. The localization team carefully avoided making the references too explicit, changing the Japanese names to create distance while maintaining the tribute. This careful navigation of homage and infringement became a template for future references, showing how to honor inspirations without inviting legal action. The later edition of Hitmontop completed the trio, though no real fighter corresponds to it, showing that the pattern could extend beyond its origin, that design systems gain independence from their inspirations. The claim that Lickitung's tongue extends twice its body length raises questions about where the tongue retracts to when not in use. The anatomy required to store such a length suggested either an extremely compressed tongue packed into its mouth or an extra dimensional storage solution, neither of which is explained or justified. This biological impossibility, casually presented in the Pokédex, demonstrates how Pokémon treats fantasy as fact, asking players to accept absurdity without demanding explanation. The tongue's sticky saliva paralyzing prey adds a predatory element to what looks like a harmless, goofy creature, showing that appearances deceive, that even silly looking Pokemon can be dangerous. The choice to make Raiden the first Pokemon ever designed gives it historical significance beyond its stats or popularity. This origin point position, the creature that started everything, makes Raiden symbolically important even if it's not competitively viable or widely loved. The designers have said that Raiden came from wanting a strong, simple creature that could be drawn quickly, establishing the aesthetic that all subsequent Pokemon would follow. Its evolution from quadrupedal to bipedal, from mindless charging to intelligent combat, mirrors theories about human evolution, creature gaining sophistication through development. The fact that Chansey's eggs are delicious and nutritious, highly sought by both humans and Pokemon, creates a disturbing economy where these creatures are valued primarily as food sources. The games mention this casually, NPCs discussing Chansey eggs as rare delicacies, but never explore the implications of farming sentient creatures for their reproductive output. This moral complexity, hinted at but not examined, adds darkness to the setting, suggesting that the Pokemon world isn't the utopia it appears, that exploitation exists alongside partnership. The eggs regenerate quickly, mentioned in the Pokédex, which somewhat ameliorates concerns about overharvesting, but raises questions about the biological cost of constant reproduction. The presence of a baby in every Kangaskhan's pouch from birth creates an impossible life cycle that fans have tried to explain through increasingly elaborate theories. Does the baby grow up and get its own baby? Are they separate species that only exist together? The developers have never clarified, letting the mystery persist because any explanation would satisfy some fans while disappointing others. The Mega Evolution's decision to bring the baby into battle, temporarily evolving it into a fighter, sparked controversy about whether this constitutes child endangerment, a surprisingly serious discussion about ethics in a fantasy game about magical creatures. The theory that Staryu and Starmie are extraterrestrial, based on their geometric perfection, and the Pokédex's claim that Starmie sends signals into space, has significant in universe support. The red core, described as a gemstone but resembling a technological component, suggests artificial construction rather than biological evolution. The regeneration ability, regrowing limbs almost instantly, exceeds most Pokemon's healing capabilities, implying either advanced biology or technology masquerading as life. If Staryu is alien, it's the only extraterrestrial Pokemon in Generation 1, making it unique in ways players might not realize, an immigrant from the stars hiding among Earth's native species. Scyther's design as pure predator, every feature optimized for hunting, makes it one of the most functionally perfect Pokemon. The scythes, sharp enough to slice through thick trees in a single motion, the streamlined body minimizing air resistance, the compound eyes providing nearly 360-degree vision, all combine into a killing machine that somehow remains sympathetic through design elegance. The choice to make it bug and flying rather than ugg and steel anticipated its future evolution into Scizor, showing that the designers planned ahead, building evolution paths that wouldn't be revealed for years. The parallel design of Electabuzz and Magmar, two humanoid elementals with similar stats and availability, established a pattern that future generations would repeat with pairs like Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. This twinning creates completionist urges, players feeling compelled to catch both, even though their niches overlap significantly. The designers understood that artificial scarcity increases perceived value, making each version, exclusive or location exclusive Pokemon, feel more special than if they were freely available. This marketing insight, built into game design, helped drive trading between players, strengthening the community aspect that defined Pokemon's social success. Ash. Catching 30 Taros in a single episode became legendary not just for the absurdity, but because the episode wasn't initially aired in many regions, creating a gap in continuity that confused viewers. The Japanese episode featured guns pointed at Pokemon, content deemed too intense for young international audiences, leading to its removal from the broadcast schedule. This meant Western viewers saw Ash suddenly have 30 Taros with no explanation of where they came from, a mystery that became a meme before memes were formalized. The episode's eventual release in edited form satisfied curiosity, but by then the confusion had become part of Pokemon folklore, a story about censorship and cultural differences told through missing context. Making Lapras endangered, hunted nearly to extinction by humans, added environmental stakes to a game that could have ignored such themes. This decision, showing that the Pokemon world faces similar conservation challenges as our own, educated children about extinction through gameplay, making them protective of a species they might otherwise have treated as just another rare encounter. The NPC who gives you Lapras in the games tells you its species is in decline, adding weight to the gift, making it feel like you're being trusted with something precious and fragile. This narrative framing transformed Lapras from rare capture to conservation responsibility, teaching environmental ethics through RPG mechanics. The theory that Ditto is a failed clone of Mew based on their identical weight, matching shiny coloration, and shared ability to learn transform has become so widely accepted that many fans treat it as canon, despite never being confirmed. The evidence is circumstantial, but compelling. Both weigh exactly 14 pounds. Both appear in Cerulean Cave, where Mewtwo resides, suggesting connection to cloning experiments, and Ditto's existence as a blob of cells that can become anything mirrors Mew's role as genetic ancestor. This theory elevates Ditto from joke Pokemon to tragic failure, a creature that should have been perfect but came out wrong, an imperfect copy that serves as living evidence of humanity's failed ambition. The decision to keep adding evolutions to Eevee across generations shows commitment to its core concept that one Pokemon should contain infinite possibility. Each new evolution, from Umbreon and Espeon in Generation 2 to Sylveon in Generation 6, expands Eevee's potential while maintaining the original three's primacy. This continuing development makes Eevee unique, the only Pokemon whose evolution tree keeps growing, whose future remains open. The marketing implications are clear. Eevee can never be complete, always offering something new to discover, always giving players reason to return to a familiar companion and see it transform in previously impossible ways. The ability to resurrect extinct Pokemon from fossils raises ethical questions the games acknowledge but don't fully explore. These creatures went extinct millions of years ago. Their environments no longer exist. The world they evolved for is gone. Bringing them back, however miraculous, creates beings out of time, refugees from ancient eras forced into modern contexts. The games treat this positively, resurrection, as triumph over extinction, but the implications are darker, suggesting that human curiosity justifies creating life that cannot truly return home. Later games would explore these themes more explicitly with ultra beasts and other displaced creatures, but the seeds were planted in the casual acceptance of fossil resurrection. The description of Aerodactyl being restored from DNA preserved in amber mirrors the premise of Jurassic Park, acknowledging that influence while avoiding direct reference. The scientific accuracy of amber preservation, genuinely capable of maintaining DNA for millions of years, though not functional DNA, adds realism to the fantasy. The choice to make Aerodactyl aggressive and hard to control, described in the Pokédex as savage, suggests that not all extinct creatures should be revived, that some species went extinct for good reasons, that prehistory contained dangers modern times have moved beyond. Snorlax represents pure contentment, a creature so satisfied with existence that it spends most of its time asleep. This lifestyle, enviable and infuriating depending on perspective, makes Snorlax either the wisest Pokemon or the laziest, perhaps both simultaneously. The fact that waking it requires the Pokéflute, music being the only thing that penetrates its deep sleep, suggests that art has power that simple physical disturbance lacks, that beauty can reach consciousness when nothing else can. This romantic notion that music accesses deeper truths than noise elevates a simple game mechanic into philosophical statement about art's power to move souls. The trio of Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres represents one of Pokemon's first attempts at legendary creatures, establishing patterns that future generations would follow. The elemental balance, ice, electricity, and fire, creates a symbolic trinity winter, Sturmhome, and summer, cold, energy, and heat. Their locations, Seafoam Islands, Power Plant, and Victory Road, reflect their natures while distributing them across the map, ensuring players encounter them at different progression points. The choice to make them catchable rather than immortal gods shows that even legendaries can be captured, that nothing in the Pokemon world is too powerful or sacred to be partnered with, a democratic approach to mythology that empowers players rather than subordinating them. The contrast between Dragonaire's sleek elegance and Dragonite's rotund form disappointed many players who expected the final evolution to be even more graceful. This aesthetic deviation, making the most powerful non legendary Pokemon look friendly and approachable rather than fearsome, suggests that ultimate power doesn't require intimidating appearance, that strength can be kind. Dragonite's Pokédex entries emphasize its rescue efforts, saving drowning sailors and guiding lost ships, positioning it as guardian rather than destroyer. This characterization Making the strongest dragon fundamentally benevolent subverts fantasy tropes about power corrupting or might making right, offering instead a vision where capability creates responsibility. The first Pokemon movie's decision to center on Mewtwo's search for meaning elevated the franchise from children's entertainment to philosophy for all ages. The questions Mewtwo asks about identity, purpose, and the value of artificial life are genuinely profound, addressing themes that most franchises aimed at children avoid. The movie's willingness to have Ash die and be resurrected through the tears of Pokemon showed that the franchise could handle genuine stakes, real consequences, death that matters even if it's reversed. This emotional depth, taking itself seriously while remaining accessible, helped Pokemon transcend its target demographic, becoming something parents and children could enjoy together for different reasons. The claim that Mew's DNA contains the genetic information of all Pokemon makes it a literal common ancestor, the origin point from which all species descended. This biology, impossible but thematically perfect, positions Mew as the first Pokemon from which all others evolved. The playful personality described in the Pokédex, curious and childlike, despite being the source of all life, creates appealing contradiction, ancient but youthful, primordial but innocent. This characterization makes Mew the franchise's heart, representing Pokemon in its purest form, before specialization, before type advantages, before strategy, just a creature that exists for the joy of existing. The 151 Pokemon of Generation 1 created a template that every subsequent generation would follow, establishing design principles and gameplay mechanics that remain largely unchanged decades later. The balance between accessibility and depth, the tension between collection and competition, the fusion of cute designs with strategic complexity, all originated in these first creatures. These are the first 151, each one a small world of thought and decision. Some were designed in minutes, others labored over for weeks, but all carry the same truth that even in fantasy, care creates meaning. The developers built a universe from mathematics and art, creatures that exist only as data, but feel alive because someone believed they should. If you've made it this far, maybe you've drifted off and back again, caught between sleep and story. That's the point. These facts weren't meant to excite. They were meant to accompany, to fill silence with gentle knowledge, the kind that asks nothing in return. This is the end for this video, and this is only part one of one fact about every Pokemon. Comment down below if you would like to see the rest of the Pokemon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed drifting through these quiet facts, there's another video waiting on the left of your screen. Maybe